Ooh, all right there. It's been a little while, guys. It's Tuesday. How you guys doing?
What's the hashtag for solo?
Hashtag
solo Star Wars. Okay,
So
I see it.
there's Solo a Star Wars story. There's Solo movie, which you
Okay.
could also use.
Solo movie. Oh yeah, look at that. They both have little heads next to
Right.
them.
Whereas just Solo, they decided not to do that one.
Okay,
Which
I see.
it's up to them. I mean, they have choices.
Well, I'm Sarah, obviously on the Twitter.
I am Keith.
I'm at Popped Show right now. Talk to me live, or later at popshow.com, but not this week. We'll deal with that later. You can join the conversation, facebook.com/popshow. You might be listening live on Facebook, or you could have downloaded us from iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or Podbean. Today we are talking about hashtag solo Star Wars, hashtag solo movie, but not hashtag solo.
And we've got a guest.
We're being joined by Miles.
Hey, Miles.
This would have been more dramatic if I was like out of frame and then came into frame instead of just sitting here quietly over the course of that. Video people know what I'm talking about.
That's right.
Yeah, well, we got to balance everything, It's
If you want to be involved with this video magic and see what Miles is talking about, you can join us on Facebook on many given Tuesdays.
on Tuesdays occasionally.
Several Tuesdays.
If it's happening, it's a Tuesday. We'll just put it that way. At 8 p.m. Eastern time, and 8 to question marks. Sometimes we go to 10, sometimes we go to 9. It depends on how fired up we are.
I mean, if I'm here, we're probably going till 10.
Yeah, we probably are. Based on our
It's okay,
conversation.
though. We like hanging out with you.
We do.
So that helps.
And based on our conversation in the Slack room today, I feel like we'll either go for a really long time or stop talking immediately because we already shared everything we needed to know on the subject of Star Wars, solo Star Wars.
Hashtag solo.
Hashtag solo Star Wars.
Technically, Solo a Star Wars story.
Right,
I can't keep up anymore.
right. But until we get into all that wonderful stuff, which we absolutely will.
Look at Neil. More like so a Star Wars story.
Aw, Neil.
Neil, we're not talking about that yet.
You've got to fire off with the negativity right out of the gate.
Yes,
It's
he
so
does.
negativity.
Well,
Negativity is what Star Wars fans are doing to Claire Marie Tran on Instagram right now.
okay.
Right? That's just an opinion.
Okay, well, save it. We're getting there. First of all, Miles, what did you do in pop culture this week?
I did a fair number of things in pop culture this week, all told in these circumstances. I saw Life of the Party.
Oh yeah, the old
I
school
saw-
remake.
I saw your
essentially.
post.
Yes. So it's one of those circumstances where I like to believe that I'm a very conscientious moviegoer,
Okay.
right? That I'm aware of the people around me, that I'm not going to make noise, and I'm going to avoid disrupting the people around me. And I would like to think that if I had been at a significantly busy screening of this movie opening weekend, that I would have maintained this. But I was in a fairly empty screening of this movie.
Where'd you go? What theater?
I was at Regal.
Okay.
I was there with a colleague, and I was performatively angry at this movie throughout.
Why's that?
For a variety of reasons, which you can find on my Letterboxd page. You can share it via the Pop Twitter account if you would like. Basically, I would say that this movie was designed to attack me on multiple levels.
It had it in for you personally.
It was such a fundamental misrepresentation of how college works, which I sort of expected, right? Admittedly, the idea that basically this mother returns to school after divorce to reclaim her life. That's the premise of the film. But she enrolls in classes with no problem, despite the semester having already started.
Yeah.
And moreover, she appears to be taking what looks to be an introductory paleontology class, despite the fact she had senior standing and only had a year left, and was not taking upper level classes of any type.
That's weird.
She is
Maybe an interdisciplinary studies maybe
I don't
degree?
know what they were figuring out.
Okay.
Believe it or not, the logistics of her finishing her degree were not dealt with in this picture.
Weird.
And then, as a middle 40-year-old woman, as mid-40s woman, she was roomed with a college junior in a dorm, as in she shared a room with a 21-year-old.
I feel like that's against standard university housing practices.
I feel like they've got specific housing for older students.
Right. Then they would be like suite situations. You're
Yeah.
not literally sharing a room. There's a reason they did that, and it's all the reason of the fact that this worked out this way.
It's weird.
But the thing is, all of that, I'm used to being annoyed by that in movies, and I'm used to that being a minority opinion. The
Okay.
vast majority of people don't care. But the depiction of literal human behavior in this movie is honestly profoundly off. Like, worse than I could have imagined.
Like it's one of those scripts written by a robot that had a bunch of scripts put into it and it thinks it's human.
Right, there's this whole sort of notion, things characters do in this movie, things they care about, their relative motivation. No characters have scenes that do not involve Melissa McCarthy's character, so she seems like a human being and everybody else seems like nothing. Various moments, choices, details. It's a fundamentally incompetent movie, and the fact that it was actually written for her by her husband, who also directed it, raises so many questions about that marriage and why she's putting up with this. She allegedly co-wrote this script. It honestly felt like, and this is how I feel in this context, that the script was, I would argue, it's as if they had to film it because, the production incentives were about to run out, and they had no other choice but to do so. It felt like it had no polish. It felt like no logic. Characters existed for no reason. Other characters existed too much. I really honestly enjoyed hating this movie a lot. And
it
then
sounds like a good movie you really could hate.
I left, and it's not the most incompetent thing I've seen. And Melissa McCarthy is very good in everything because she's great. But it struck me as such an affront to her and everything else that I felt it had to be acknowledged. So. I then, the next morning, got up and couldn't sleep, and so I worked
You were so disturbed.
I worked through all of my objections to this film, just to get them on paper, just to get them out. Because I had a conversation with a friend the night before, and he's just like, I didn't realize how much I needed to go over this with someone. So I feel like it's a service that we can perform.
How does it compare to other... Ooh, excuse me. I apologize.
We have a call.
Yeah, I will fix that, and we will answer it right now, actually. Miles, I will hold that question for you and bring it back up here in a second. But now, we've got to talk comics with Greg. If he's there.
Do we really? Or,
Yay!
I mean, it's up to you, Greg, frankly.
It sounds lame. I mean, for everyone else, I love talking about comic books.
Well, you own a comic shop, so I'd hope so.
That's true.
Yeah, it would be weird if you didn't like talking about comics.
You know, I love talking about comics only to a handful of people, 4 people.
Well,
and you guys are 2 of them, so yay.
Sweet.
Well,
Nailed
Miles
it.
is here, so add another one to the list. He's on the list, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, Miles doesn't really talk comics, though, does he?
No.
Yeah, see, so you're
I
good.
bought some comics at Free Comic Book Day.
Yeah, he shows up.
Don't ask me if I've gotten to read them yet, but they're on my table.
I like how you said you bought some comics at Free Comic Book Day.
It's important.
Thank you, Miles.
You're
if
welcome.
only everyone was that sweet.
So awesome, Greg. Well, we got to do it. So
Hit me.
Oh, there it goes. I'm going to do it this week. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Comes with Greg. 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 See, Greg, I did that just for you.
You know, I really appreciate it. And you did it 8 times exactly, which is the perfect amount.
Oh, I know. I aim to please. I'm so glad that you've joined our show to talk with us about comics. I'll do the chant just for
I'm
you.
here.
awesome. Well, have we got a big week this week, Greg?
Yeah, there's some really good books coming out. Actually, I had a hard time deciding on just 3 things to send you today. So
I noticed that. So let's start off with them. Which one you want to start with first?
we'll start with Deadpool #1 tomorrow. I'm excited for this book because it's written by Scotty Young, who did all the really great and funny Marvel baby variant covers. Do you remember those?
Yes, and he also did I Hate Fairyland, I believe, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I Hate Fairyland. He wrote and drew that. He's just writing this book, but I think he's a great choice to take over from the previous writer. So he's sharp and witty, and I think this is going to be a really good Deadpool comic. So Deadpool 1. If you've ever wanted to read Deadpool, tomorrow is your best shot.
Yeah, and I read the Posehn and Duggan run on Deadpool, and that was really good. But then I guess the follow up where he was had his own mercs and all this stuff. I got kind of bored with that one pretty quickly, so hopefully this brings us back to a decent read for the character.
I will say, if
Absolutely.
you were a reader of nerd culture online, like we tend to be, there was quite a bit of buzz about this particular comic today.
Yeah.
So
Scotty Young's a really popular guy within the comic industry, artist-wise and writing-wise. So I might have to pick this one up.
Yeah, he's really great. And, everyone loved the Deadpool movie, both Deadpool movies, and then they come and they want to read the comics. And, it's tough to make a comic as funny as the movie every month,
Right.
It's just a little bit more difficult. But Deadpool is definitely a funny book, a funny character. It's very similar to the movie. So it's not like, you would watch Deadpool and then read the comic and think they're totally different. They're really not at all.
Okay, good. Well, what's next on our list?
From DC tomorrow, Justice League #1. This is a huge book. It's Scott Snyder, who wrote Metal, who wrote Batman, and Jim Cheung, who's been a Marvel artist for 15 years probably, or longer. This is his first full DC work. But DC's getting a lot of really big Marvel guys to come work for them, because I think they're doing exciting stuff. And this book is gorgeous. I love Jim Cheung's art. I think he draws superheroes really well. And the first issue of that is tomorrow as well.
Awesome. I might have to get back into reading Justice League. I was picking up some of the trades for a while there, and I kind of fell away from it, so maybe I'll start back up again.
And you get the Legion of Doom in this book. I mean, come on.
Starting off strong.
Bad
Okay.
guys, the lore.
Yeah, I like it. All right. So,
speaking of Metal, I did want to just quickly mention that a lot of people have been asking when it gets collected because they want to read it all at once, and tomorrow is that day. The hardcover comes out from Metal, the entire series. So if you've been waiting on the collected form of Metal, it's tomorrow.
yeah, and I will. I'll definitely be picking up one of those copies if you can throw it in my box, please, because I am one of those people that have been waiting to, read Metal all at once, all collected in a nice hardcover book. So I will be picking this one up.
You're a saint, sir. It's done.
Well, thank you. You're the saint now.
And lastly, tomorrow, Bruce Banner is back as the Hulk. He's been gone forever. I feel like they had Amadeus Cho, who I actually like. I think he's a cool Hulk. He was the younger Hulk, kind of snappy and witty. But if you've been a Banner fan and you've been missing him, he's back tomorrow.
Yeah, and he was Amadeus Cho was actually on the Champions, which I really enjoyed that book. So
yeah, that was a really nice. It was nice to see him in a team kind of aspect as well. So that was a great book. This Hulk book has a little bit of a horror tinge to it. So kind of an interesting take on the Hulk. It's called The Immortal Hulk #1 from Marvel. And tomorrow is the day, Wednesday, big Wednesday.
Awesome. Well, we got a lot of books out tomorrow then.
Yeah, stoked.
All sorts of stuff. Okay.
Hey, Greg, did you see the news about the new line of vans that's all Marvel comic-y?
I did indeed. I saw the Captain Marvel vans. They were sweet. It's like they really know me on a personal level. I literally only wear vans, and I do like comics.
So they basically
I have to grab a pair.
They were sitting around in the Vans, think tank, and they're like, you know what we need to do? Make Greg happy. Which is, to be fair, what we do here at Pop Central.
It's true.
But
what would make 40-year-old white dudes happy? Marvel vans, clearly.
40-year-old white dudes have gone through a lot of shit in their life, so they really need as much as they can get.
No, they have money.
It's true.
Yes, it's a nice treat, and I hope they're cool. I did see those, and I'm stoked for that.
Yeah,
Excellent.
I'll probably be picking up a pair as well. I'm not quite 40 yet, but I'm getting there, and I should probably have my own pair of Marvel vans.
I know you have Snoopy ones.
I do have Snoopy ones. I need to add Marvel ones to it now. I do, yeah.
Yeah, he's got Snoopy ones, and I have Woodstock ones because we're the cutest couple ever.
Or the most sickening, depending on how you want to look at it.
You are officially the cutest couple ever now.
So I think those are coming out, later this summer?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll have to pick up a pair then. So, Greg, where can they pick up these fine comics and in a few months see you in these fancy new shoes?
If you're in Norfolk or the surrounding area, Local Heroes is at 1905 Colonial Avenue in Norfolk, next to Kogan's Pizza. If you're not in Norfolk, comicshoplocator.com will tell you where a really great store is close to you. So
sounds
check
good.
us out.
Awesome. Well, I will see you tomorrow, sir.
Thank you, Keith. Have a great night.
You too, man. Take it easy, dude.
Bye.
Bye. Awesome. I miss him already. Greg's the best.
What was I? Oh, yes.
Yes, Melissa McCarthy. Sorry, it's...
Well, no, I was just going to say that when he was talking about Bruce Banner being back as Hulk, and I'm like, it's Bruce Banner. He's back in Hulk form. But that was just me.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to interrupt him. I felt like there were important things.
Oh, no, you totally could have interrupted him. That's what we do all the time. So, no, that would have been an astute one. We used to really have the timing down for this show where we'd be like banter, comics, topic, no news, then topic, but we've thrown caution to the wind.
Isn't that the way?
Schedule be damned.
It's summer. It's
okay? Very true. Which we should probably mention that our summer schedule is going to be kind of sporadic, as if it hadn't already.
As opposed to the last few months where we've sort of been showing up when we felt like it. Now we will be showing up really when we feel like it.
Look, in this era of notification structures, you let people know a show is happening during the day. If they make it, they make it. They don't. You have not set an expectation. People are going to be here every Thursday sitting by their computers waiting for you.
Exactly.
And if they are, that's on them.
It's very true.
That's true. We're pretty good about announcing when we're not on.
Yeah, we try to be. We try to be very informative. But we've got a busy summer ahead of us, trips and the like. So we just want to make sure everyone knows we probably won't be back till after summer.
Right. So Melissa McCarthy.
Yes. Yeah. How does it compare to her other films? Like as far as what is it? Spy.
So first off, no, Spy is good.
Saint Vincent.
Fine. So the last film that they did was The Boss. Ben Falcone also directed that film.
Okay.
He also directed Tammy before that.
Yeah, Tammy was the other one. That was the Jason Bateman identity theft one, right?
No, that was Identity Theft.
Oh, okay. There we go. Then what was Tammy?
So Tammy was, her mother was Susan Sarandon. It was kind of like a white trash thing, aesthetic. And basically, I left this film believing that Ben Falcone had never met a human being before, and very convinced he should never direct another movie. And that was a very strong opinion, but one that I felt the film ultimately earned.
Oh, you know why I thought Tammy was Identity Thief? Because they had that same zoom up close on the face and cut off half of the face shot on the poster.
Right, yeah, that's fair.
So
I respect that. That's a real concern. But no, I enjoyed that. I started Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. The half season that they posted over the weekend.
So not the whole series. You've already caught up with all of it. And then...
I've seen this show, yes. Yeah. I just watched the first, I think, 3
so did we,
of the
actually.
new season.
Yep.
Well, we watched all the ones that are out.
Mm-hmm.
So you watched the first 6.
Yeah. And then
but I enjoyed that.
You finished Arrested Development. I did not.
Yep. Also out.
And
season 5 of Arrested Development is if you guys will, I personally, I am one of the few that liked season 4. I mean, it was choppy. It was a little bit different, but I liked that. I kind of like. It just changed it up for me. So I kind of like. And then there was the big build up and payoff at the end. You got to see how everything tied together and whatnot. But for those who like the traditional Arrested Development seasons 1 through 3,
yeah, it feels a lot more like the first few seasons.
Definitely back to that format in season 5. I mean, and to be fair, they are at their best when they're playing off of each other and all these different personalities are interacting. So. And that's what makes Arrested Development great. Mm-hmm. So they are back in true form. So
I'm waiting for the motivation to watch that. It has not struck me as of yet, but
okay. Are you all caught up with Arrested Development, or
I did watch season 4.
Okay. What'd you think?
Remember very little about season 4.
It was not a memorable season for me too. I watched it twice all the way through.
See, I definitely did not do that,
and I still didn't remember what happened. I was like, something about ostriches.
I do remember that.
I remember more what happened with Arrested Development season 4 than I did with Kimmy Schmidt season 3 apparently.
Yeah.
Because we got into Kimmy Schmidt season 4 and I was like, wait, why is she there again? I thought she ended with the traffic
no,
school.
Yeah. I remember that came from that, but the specifics of how she ended up in that job are definitely not explained.
Okay, good. So I didn't.
Well, it happened at the very end of the season. It was the very literal last thing that took place. But I also think the show doesn't care. If I'm being perfectly honest with you, it just likes putting her in a situation where they can work through some more stories. I think they've been very aware that this is the last full season of doing a movie after this. I think they're towards the end of that show's life. And
did we know they were doing a movie?
Yeah, it's been on Facebook.com/PopShow.
It has.
Well, I knew that.
It's going to be a movie on Netflix. It's not like it's a theatrical release. But they're not doing another season after this. Huh. There's the next half season that comes out in January, and then probably a movie late next year.
I gotta say, there's an episode, and I think it's one of the lighter ones, so you might not have seen it, that spoofs another popular Netflix show that was?
No, I saw it was the last one I watched.
Oh, okay. So it spoofed Making a Murderer, which
Yes.
of course was also spoofed by American Vandal.
Right.
Yes.
So Keith watches it and he goes, "It reminds me of American Vandal." And I'm like, "No, sorry, I didn't mean to get all loud there." I said, but I was like, "No, it reminded you of Making a Murderer," which of course is the.
I just want to be very clear though, like it still also did remind me about of American Vandal, even though I've seen Making a Murderer and I'm very aware of its style, which I think just speaks to how well American Vandal kind of registered in that space. Because on some level, like with Kimmy Schmidt, I realized it is the sort of somewhat empty parody that American Vandal should have been, but wasn't, because American Vandal was trying to do so much and accomplishing so much and going so in depth.
But it was so good.
It was still very good. It was all very good. I liked the Kimmy Schmidt episode fine, but
yeah, and I think that's why I tied it to American Vandal, because I knew Kimmy Schmidt was obviously parodying that. American Vandal was the parody, so I tied it parody to parody.
Well, you felt the same way. You felt happy watching the intro to Kimmy Schmidt and the intro to American Vandal, and when you're watching the intro to Making a Murderer, you were just bored. Because the show is great, but when you've watched that intro like a million times and you're starting to get really into the court cases and you want to know how it goes, and it's like, I can't handle any more birds.
And I'm trying to think, when Making a Murderer came out, did they have the skip intro function on that yet, or no?
Don't get me started on the skip intro.
So I don't think they did, because we also I made you catch up on Orange is the New Black too, and there's another one of the longest theme songs ever.
It's not that long.
It is so long.
Y'all are really convinced it's long, but it's not that long.
It's long. I don't care if it's psychologically long or actually long. Either way, it's really long. No, we can't. Gosh. I know, but the next month we get the next
July
season.
27th.
I know. How do you feel about the next season of Orange is the New Black? Because last season was a little bit of a train wreck, but you could see the tracks.
So last season, like I was talking to someone recently who caught up, and like I write about this show for the AV Club, so I'll be reviewing this new season as well. And like my general opinion of last season was, I understand why they made the choice to isolate themselves over a short period of time, but it had fundamentally damaging effects on the balance of comedy and drama, because you're in an inherently high-stakes situation where, like, at any given moment, everything could fall apart. And some characters were taking that very, very seriously, mainly Tasty through Danielle Brooks, who I thought was tremendous throughout that season. But then the show kept having to be a comedy, so it kept having to interject these like characters who weren't taking it seriously, and so the tonal back and forth was much more aggressive than I felt it had been in the past.
That's fair.
And I felt like the ending really resonated, but the episodes up before that point, I thought escalated in this like bizarre villain situation. I won't spoil it specifically, but everything with that particular character was hot garbage, and they attempted to humanize them. Despite the fact I didn't think that was possible, they remained very much one-dimensional. I thought there was some bad choices there, but where it left off, like this show often does, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I'm curious, based on the promo image that we got, it looks like they're kind of willing to move beyond their current setting and explore different areas.
Yeah.
And so I'm very curious what that shakeup looks like. I have to think at this point we're pretty short in terms of the life cycle. This is season 6. It's renewed through 7 at the very least. I'm curious what the end game looks like, if Piper will be gone before the season finishes, because she eventually does have to kind of maybe get out. Like, there's all sorts of questions that we sort of have to kind of work from.
See, I kind of liked last season because it didn't focus on Piper.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, now, I'm never mad at that. I want to be very, very clear. My objection with that show is never going to be not enough Piper. And to be fair, I would argue that she hasn't been the lead character in that show for multiple seasons now.
Yeah, that's true.
And I don't think the show really pretended that she was.
They got back to her in like season 4 and like focused on her too much. 3 or 4, I think. And I was like, all right, this is annoying.
And I mean, it happens that kind of pops up, but I feel like she kind of pops in like any character pops in now.
Fair enough.
But I would argue that at the same time that they oriented herself with Piper's perspective, I think they can pull Piper out of prison and use that as another story and perspective to be able to pull on the memoir and make that work. But these are all questions that I think we have.
So my problem is, I never felt like it was a accurate portrayal of prison, which would probably be really boring, right? So I knew that. I
love how you're just like, I know what prison is like.
No, but see, I don't know what prison is like. Obviously, I'm
glad for that.
It started out as like a obvious dramatization, right? Like, obviously, this is for the viewer and not about actual prison, right? But it has gone so from what I can even imagine prison might be like. And now it's like, there's just no way. There's no way
that this is, yeah.
Right. Like,
Well, you have
It's
to
not a
remember
realist-
too that part of what's happening here is that the you know, whether or not the show is a comedy or a drama has long been a contention, generically speaking. And often at times I feel like they're forcing comedy into this in order to be able to justify competing as a comedy at the Screen Actors Guild Awards and everything
that's
else.
true.
And so, and I think there's like this, and to be fair, Genji Cohen, who did Weeds before this, loves taking situations that are inherently dramatic and just inserting random comic characters into them and just kind of playing with tone. She loves it. It's a thing for her. I don't always love that results of that, frankly, but I think that's just the kind of balance that she works with. And so for me, it's like we're talking in the chat. You think Tasty was a pain in the ass? I would disagree with that quite strongly.
What Robert was saying there, he was.
I mean, like Piper is still. I would agree with that. I think Piper has to stay a part of it, but I think you can pull her out of prison and use that as a different perspective.
Yeah, they straddled that life on the outside, life on the inside
for 2 seasons.
For the first couple seasons.
And they did a little bit of it this season too, with Daya's mother. In the past season. But again, it's like
that. I thought that was mainly just because they brought her back into the fold of everything.
And everything with Daya's choices make me working through that. The ending of Weeds was very weird. To Robert's point, and I don't quite understand why it was as weird as it was. It felt like she frankly didn't even really want to end the show. It was sort of unclear. As for sort of general question, is it okay to hate the show? It's okay to hate anything as long as you don't.
I hope when Greg asked that, if it's okay to hate the show, I hope he means Orange is the New Black and not like us.
Yeah, no, it's not okay to hate
because we
show.
just got off the phone with Greg, and now he comes on our page talking crap, and he's like,
Greg, you are not allowed to hate this show.
You're allowed to hate Orange is the New Black.
Right? Yeah. I mean, the thing about Orange too is like I think it's a show that. For me, like I'm invested in these characters and sort of their kind of relationships and systems. I want to know their fate. I want to make that work. But the longer the show runs, the tougher that will be. I feel like some of the characters I kind of lost track of in terms of whether I care about them still. I think they do need to figure that out. That's sort of a question they've got to grapple with. But they've got 2 more seasons. They've known they've had this many seasons. It was ordered for 3 more the last time it was renewed. So I'm very curious. I'm very curious what this looks like July 27th.
Well, they alluded to Max.
They did.
In their little teaser that they dropped today. And I will say, I kind of appreciate the way, like Orange is the New Black has always felt really on the leading edge of the social promotion, the social media stuff. They've always felt really good at that. So I enjoy the little teasers and they do get me, excited.
I mean,
about
Netflix has figured this out where like they'll renew shows by posting about it on social media instead of just sending a press release.
Yeah.
And it's just like really annoying for people who work in TV like media. Trust me.
No, I believe it.
But I think it gives a sense that they're talking to their I was gonna say fans. They're talking to their customers first.
Yeah.
Let's be honest with that.
Well, I mean, and it gets picked up by the online stuff in like 5 seconds.
100%.
Yeah.
It works wonders just to kind of give you a sense that's like a movement where it's like, oh, everybody's talking about this, and I'm like, yeah, because Netflix posted about it.
Yeah.
And has its social feeds moving accordingly. But that's how that works.
Yep. Well, I have no transition into this. So, Solo? We all saw it, yes?
I mean, yes.
The movie?
We did.
We saw it.
Yeah.
Good discussion. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, I mean, like, just to sort of transition to that at some point in some process, I think one of the things that I find most interesting about Solo as a conversation starter is just the fact that it very much functions like a pilot of a TV show in that it's doing a lot of work to convince us that we should spend more time in this corner of this universe in a way that no Star Wars film has necessarily done in the past, where it's not so much creating the beginning of a narrative that will get picked up in the next film, but it's a much more sort of general world-building project that I think has some interesting circumstances and dynamics to make that work.
Which, yeah, I will agree with that because this is the first time they've done it in film. They've been building a universe plenty of times.
Yeah, you and your animated shows and comics and all of that stuff.
It's canon, Miles. It must be considered. It's canon.
Exactly.
Well, this film very much proves that it's canon. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, because there's plenty of references to those shows and to...
one major one, one pretty significant one in that context. But no, I mean, like, I think ultimately that's what struck me about it, and what I sort of came out of it thinking was how much I got to the end of this movie and very much sort of responded to, really, I would argue in those circumstances, the ways in which I felt with 10 minutes left in this movie, all of a sudden my attention was moved from let's enjoy this film to, hey, Guess what we might be doing in the future? Neon lights flashing in that direction.
I mean, I was okay with those neon lights, though.
I wasn't mad at the neon lights. I just found them very conspicuous.
Fair enough.
So
they are neon lights.
We have a
they are
guest.
neon lights.
If you two would stop talking for a second.
Am I not enough guest for you?
No, you're not enough guest. We had to bring in another guest, more guests. And now we've got Henry with us. And Henry is also going to join the solo talk.
Hi.
Hi.
Can I just point out for a second how we're talking about the movie Solo but needed 4 people? I'm just putting it out there.
You use hashtag solo.
I have used hashtag Solo.
You're
in the past.
wrong. It's hashtag solo Star Wars.
Right.
At Pop Show.
I fight the paid emoji where I can. If they ultimately have gone through that effort, I'm going to subvert them at every point.
Damn the man. I hear it. I respect it.
And did I use the hashtag to connect to other people using the hashtag, or just to indicate what movie I'm talking about?
You did it just to watch the world burn.
Both.
Okay, that too. All of
Both.
these things.
Yeah.
I did all of these things is the best way to understand it.
Don't play coy, Miles. We know what you're up to.
Henry, what'd you think? Did you like it?
The movie itself, yeah, just I enjoyed it. I had a good time. There was a little too much like griminess throughout the movie. There was a lot of like really dark scenes, really like dirty scenes, and like I was just praying for when they had scenes where there was actual sunlight or anything. That was like, I was like, yay, that's so much better. But that was my only real big complaint, was I didn't care for some of the cinematography.
So to that point, though, I mean, like, there's been a lot of conversation online from critics who saw, like, the premiere screenings and that type of thing, who are arguing that this is an issue of projection at the local Cineplex level, whether it's 3D filters left on the kind of projector or whether it's sort of issues, because they felt that they did not have that complaint, but then saw the movie in theaters afterwards and agreed with it. And so it seems like there might be sort of some issues of the cinematography just not translating to the current state of exhibition in this country, which is terrible on multiple levels. But I do agree, like, there's definitely a very dark film. You can tell, I think, ultimately, I think Bradford Young was going for a particular aesthetic that may not have translated to the theater in the way that maybe he wanted it to.
It's got to be really bad for me to notice. I didn't even notice the CGI face on Soups.
Oh, really?
No, I really didn't.
Not even in the opening scene, because the opening scene.
No,
I
didn't.
Thank you, Miles. Like, I'm sitting here, like, we're watching Justice League, and I'm like...
I know. Keith kept pointing it out and leaning over during the movie and saying, like, oh my gosh, look at Superman's face. And then I was like, well, now
I'm really glad
noticed.
I did not see that movie with you guys. That would have...
Yeah, he ruined it.
I didn't ruin it. I just pointed out obvious things.
So Vanessa's on our Facebook saying that she also liked it, and that she, much like me, went in not knowing much about the story, and she liked it.
Well, things changed within the production, which I think, Henry mentioned the kind of the darker side of things, cinematography wise, and I think it's because we were originally going to get a much darker movie. Things came around. Lord and Miller were out. Ron Howard was back in, and honestly, at this point, if you don't lose your directors during production, is it really a Star Wars movie?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's just, Abrams and Johnson, the other two, significantly plagued by it. Trank didn't even get a chance to make his movie.
Well,
before
and
he got
Trevorrow
booted.
too.
Trevorrow, same thing with 9. The one thing I'll say on that point, though, tied to that, was that I don't know if it would have been that much darker or anything else, because of course, apparently, we are seeing the script as it was originally written, right? And so, like,
Yes and no, because the art book has come out since.
Right.
And there are a lot of character designs and yes, I get it. Some things you draw up, they don't make it to film.
Yeah.
But one of the big things was Vision's character, Paul Bettany.
Yeah.
What was his character's name? I'm trying to think of it right now. The crime boss.
Right. I'm not going to remember that in a million years.
Neither am I. He was supposed to be a CGI'd alien.
Right.
But because Ron Howard came in and things were already over budget, blah, 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 production cost.
Well, the other issue there was they had to recast the actor, because Michael K. Williams was supposed to play that part and ultimately couldn't, because for reshoots they could not bring him back because he had a scheduling conflict.
Right.
So while we've got Henry... Yes. We should probably let him talk a little bit. Henry, how's
People
it?
like seeing his face up there, too.
We do like seeing his face, but we'd also like to hear his voice. How is it doing with the box office?
Not good. Disney is probably going to lose $50 million on this or more.
That's like a drop in the bucket to them.
It had well under what they were expecting for the opening weekend, that's like death for a movie like Star Wars. If you can't get the kind of audience you want for the opening weekend, you're done. So it's not like it's gonna be a movie where it like grows over time, a sleeper hit. Everyone knows Star Wars. If you're not seeing Star Wars opening weekend, then there's a problem, because that's what most fans and a lot of people end up doing.
So what are the reasons why they're saying it slumped off the way it has?
There's been so many theories thrown around in the last 10 days or so since it came out. And there's definitely a lot of people blaming the marketing, saying it just did not really click with audiences, the trailers and the posters and everything. There's a lot of, which, in a lot of cases, that is the case. The marketing, a lot of movies live or die based on that. And then you've got the fact that the movie came out 5 months after The Last Jedi, and maybe people are just like Star Wars'd out, and this is like too many in a row. Which is definitely something that I've written a little about, thinking that Disney, their entire purpose is to churn out as many Star Wars movies as possible, and maybe that's not the best way to handle a franchise like this, for contra Marvel, which has so many different universes you can explore. And then, of course, the one that everyone, the one that gets people up in arms the most is people saying that, well, the fans, a lot of them anyway, did not care for The Last Jedi, and that soured them on Star Wars, and they didn't go see this movie as a result.
So, Henry, let me ask you something. Bill says that he thinks that they'll make up some money on downloads and online rentals, and he was worried that it had to compete with Infinity Wars still and Deadpool.
That's
so for the record, that number, that 50 million, is including all home revenue, everything.
Oh, so that's
they're
the
factoring
projection.
in literally.
Okay.
They're projecting out from the cost of the movie, the marketing budget, and everything.
But here's my thing on that though, because it's losing $50 million. Like Sarah said, it's a drop in the bucket. I'm sure Disney's really
it's
crying.
a drop in the bucket for Disney. $50 is $50 I don't have. I'm just going to make that clear.
$50 million, $50 million, but yes.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying
Yeah,
I'm so
she's
poor.
putting it-
that
Okay,
$50
yes, you've removed it by a pocket of $1 million. Got it. We're on the
50
same
million,
page. Yeah.
50 million for Disney, 50 for Sarah.
Yeah, that's
right. So, but for them, if all the production trouble we just mentioned, if they hadn't had that, this would have made them money, because they went significantly over budget doing reshoots and all the transition of the production.
You have to presume that, I would say this movie was probably budgeted about 175, and it went to about 250 if we factor in budget. Because you wouldn't have to rebuild all the sets, you wouldn't have to rebuild all those things. It was just time more than anything else. And I'm guessing most of the action set pieces are probably pretty similar. Right, it was really just dialogue that seemed to be the issue. Because typically speaking, these blockbusters too, that realistically these comedy directors or drama directors who come in don't direct the action anyway. It's often run by second ADs and first ADs, things like that. But the ultimate issue is that even if that movie had been budgeted at that lesser rate, the other issues, they spend hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing, right? All these other factors, all these sort of costs that get accrued in this process, it maybe could have broken even under that logic. But the whole point is that it's one thing for a movie to not make money, but Star Wars movies have made a lot of money. Rogue One broke $1 billion, right? Solo is barely going to hit 400 million.
When you put it like that.
And so the issue is not so much like if other movies budget at this level have made this much money, they're still going to sell some merchandise. They're still going to work through this. This isn't going to kill Star Wars. But when you've considered the expectations, like this movie making $700 million would have been considered a disappointment.
Fair point.
Now that's unreasonable, but it's true.
Yeah, I mean, I liked this movie better than Rogue One. I'm just going to say it.
Right.
I mean, Dean and I have already gotten in arguments outside of this
yes.
stuff, but I don't know about you, Henry, but I liked this one better than I liked Rogue One.
Yeah, I did too. It was there was some fun to it. I felt like after Rogue One and The Last Jedi, to me, they were both pretty dark movies. They were pretty downbeat movies, so I felt like this was the right movie right now, for me anyway.
Yeah.
Seeing more of a fun Star Wars movie.
Now,
Yes.
to that point, though, like that's one of those things where, like, is one of the conversations with the 5 month situation, which I think is true. It wasn't very long ago. The argument was, we'll just push it to Christmas, right? Star Wars movies are a Christmas thing, but like this didn't feel like a December movie to me. This felt like a summer popcorn film.
Well,
that to me, I think that's why they kept with this slot even after the reshoots, even after everything else, because this feels like the kind of time of year where you'd want to see a movie that's a fun action adventure film.
Well, and I also think it was one of those things where I read an article where they were proposing that they think Star Wars and Lucasfilms, or whatever, Disney, whatever they're called now, the new overlords, they want to get back to that May, because Star Wars used to be on traditionally a May release schedule, so they were trying to get back to that.
Yeah.
So I think just the competition and too much time in between.
Well, I mean, to the point, like Facebook mentioned Infinity War, right? Like, I mean, Infinity War did not disappoint at the box office.
Yeah.
Infinity War is overperforming, kind of very much building on Ultron. Will close somewhere like 670-ish.
Did you say Ultron?
Yeah. Because it was the last Avengers film that actually was much lower than Avengers was, and so it's now bounced back up.
Yep.
And so I think in those circumstances, what you have is that's part of the factor. Deadpool 2 opened very big and kind of pulled moving from that. But I think the bigger factor is, okay, how much money do people have to spend to go to the movies? We are not a normal audience, right?
That's true.
Yeah, that's true.
Partially, we think about MoviePass, obviously, for different contexts, and yes, we'll use that where we can. But even in general,
when we can, because they're going bankrupt.
Right.
Let's be honest.
And so, but we'll see these movies, right? We have the income to be able to see these movies.
Yes, that's
we
also
have the
true.
ability to do these things.
Yeah, and we will.
And so,
that's
for
kind
us,
of my opinion on Star Wars, is that like it's irrelevant if I like it or not. I'm gonna see it.
Yeah.
Well, see, and that's the thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah's a casual Star Wars fan. She still hasn't seen the prequels. I'm not saying that as a knock. You haven't seen the prequels. You don't care to. I'm not forcing you on it. You hadn't seen the original trilogy. Yeah, you didn't really.
I will tell you, there was no cameo for me in that movie. So, like,
spoiler.
The big buzz about cameo.
Sarah's like, who's that?
Yeah, I didn't. I asked him. I was like, why? What is everybody talking about? I didn't see anything. Was Brad Pitt in it or something? He was not. It was not Brad Pitt.
You don't know that.
No, well, okay. I do know that it was not Brad Pitt. So yeah, Bill is commenting on Facebook saying that people are more choosy with their movie going these days. Henry, do you think that's true across the industry?
Rotten Tomatoes does seem to have a lot of pull lately, and the Rotten Tomatoes score was somewhere around 70%, which, by the way, is where Jurassic World is right now. But I think we're going to see a different result with that. But I think the fact that it was pretty mediocre review-wise, that also didn't help at all.
I mean, I guess the question would be, and this is sort of, I think, where this comes from, like, if somebody didn't care that much about Star Wars, why would they go see this movie?
Yeah, I wouldn't have if I wasn't dating Keith.
That's the point I was going to make
They're
earlier.
dating Keith is the answer.
What?
Obviously, Disney needs to figure that out.
Sarah's the casual fan. Sarah wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't. I mean, I've got a whole shelf of comics back here. Like you mentioned, I watched the animated series, so I was very giddy when the cameo showed up. They were dropping names from the cartoons and stuff like that, and so I really enjoyed it. It was just a fun movie. But I think the issues that Henry mentioned and the stuff we've talked about, production issues, marketing, all this stuff, the casual viewer, I don't think was even in the know on any of that stuff.
That's the thing. Like, people kept sort of making the argument online where it's just like, oh, people saw the discourse around The Last Jedi, or people heard about the production details, and I'm like, if you asked an average moviegoer, it's like, what was going on with the director situation on Solo? They'd be like, what is Solo?
I think, though, and Henry, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that, like, take some of the big movies of this year. Like, Infinity War blew it out, and Black Panther was off the charts, and those two movies had such big draws that they attracted people with the buzz outside of, like, I'm still getting people on my Facebook feed and my Twitter feed saying, I finally saw Black Panther, or I finally saw Infinity War, now that they're in, like, dollar theaters and stuff.
Joe just saw Black Panther.
Right. So, like, obviously this is going to miss that kind of trickle-down wave that's going to happen.
Yeah, well, I saw someone comment the other day saying, like, oh, I heard so many people say they liked Solo, and I thought that it would do better the second weekend. And I said, once a movie has been branded a flop and a failure, like, that is like the Scarlet Letter. Like, It doesn't matter how many people give it good word of mouth, like on a case by case basis. When you hear that a movie is a flop, people just generally stay away. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It was ready to flop the first weekend. That's just killed it from then on.
Well, it happens with TV shows too. I mean, Miles, you're the TV buff. I would, as far as teaching all that stuff, and so I mean, you've seen. I mean, it happened with Iron Fist, and like, don't get me wrong, like there are plenty of things, Sarah and the rest of us pop crew, haven't liked, and we'll call it out for such, but we still try to remain positive and stuff about these things and try to find the good things in it, unless you're, Ghostbusters 2016. But even that, I still try to find.
There's a few things you can say are objectively unwatchable.
Yeah,
but
like Iron Fist, Solo. I mean, maybe they're not comparable, but they both got bad raps early, and like people aren't going to see it when they really should if they like Star Wars.
So here's the thing at the core of this, right? Is people aren't going to the theaters to see this movie. But I guarantee you there's going to be people who like find it on Netflix, or if it's not part of the Netflix deal, then Disney's streaming service, wherever it ends up. I'm not sure where the Netflix deal goes to as to which is the last theatrical release.
I don't know.
Because I think the Disney Netflix deal doesn't expire until the end of the year, but I don't know at what point like the rights stop.
Right.
But the point being, I think people will watch it there and be like, "Oh, this was fun."
Yeah.
Right? They will 100% think that. I don't think there's anything in this movie that someone's going to watch it and say, "Oh, I know why that flopped." Because I don't think the text of the film contains those elements.
I'll agree with
I
that.
think it's an intangible sense of Disney failed to convince people that this was a compelling story they needed to see.
Mm-hmm.
So, Henry, one more question for you from our friends online. Lando movie, true or false?
After this, probably false, though Donald Glover was great in it. But interestingly, like Donald Glover, Emilia Clarke, like the cast were not really the problem here. People didn't seem to have a big problem with that. But no, as great as he was in the movie, because his character was in Solo, I don't see them doing anything at all spinning off from this movie.
That being said, though, I mean, like, I guess my argument would be at the core of this, that the lesson from Solo is not, okay, this is, like, toss it all away, right? Baby in bathwater situation, just get rid of everything.
Which I hate that attitude.
Yeah, it's a weird attitude. But I think it's true. What you cannot do is you cannot keep making $200 million tentpoles that are not main franchise entries in this franchise. That's my view on this. That if you want to extend the Star Wars universe and make a movie based on something in this film, this could include a Lando film, this could include an Enfys Nest film, this could include an Early Days of the Rebellion film, this could include another Han film, right? You need to make modestly budgeted, kind of small-scale stories that promise to show you a different kind of Star Wars instead of just taking a character and just kind of like filling out a hole of the universe and just kind of playing into what you'd expect to see.
Well, and see, that was one of Dean's complaints. Dean couldn't make it here because he would have been our dissenting view, so to speak. He was saying that all the defining moments that we know about with Han's life, Lando, Chewbacca, the Millennium Falcon, are all in this movie. Which, from a marketing, business perspective, I get it. But I mean, I don't know. The Kessel Run was another thing. They're all in this movie together instead of being spread out across his life. So I can see that point that it makes it feel like
one weekend everything in his life.
He got his ship, he got his best friend. No, I mean I can see that. So
and to be fair, I think the end of the film does a good job of arguing sort of why that happens, which is that he doesn't like to be a hero. And to be fair, his whole thread in New Hope and in those films that he doesn't want to be perceived as a hero of the rebellion. This film very much sort of is an origin story of why he doesn't want to do that. And it certainly leaves the room, if this film had been a huge success, for him to continue sort of having reluctant heroic missions.
For sure.
Of various forms,
Continuing
fighting these crime syndicates and moving through that. I think you could have imagined that playing out by surrounding with new supporting cast and going through all of this. But so Sarah, did you care about any of those things that Keith just listed?
No.
Right? Kessel Run, you weren't sort of like...
I didn't care about Han Solo at all, except for how dreamy 80s Harrison Ford is.
You could have seen Working Girl and you would have been fine.
Yep, totally. Any day of the week. But okay, before we get into my deep love of 80s Harrison Ford, Henry, before we let you go and get you to sign off and everything, Neil has one question. He says that he thinks it's hard to have any franchise maintain this level of success over so many films, which is a really good point. And have any other movie franchises really have hits that often? I mean, I think Marvel, and there's been some stinkers there, though.
There have, but overall,
Define stinkers.
Okay, but like relatively.
I don't think they've ever
Thor
had any
2.
like outright flops, though.
So Thor 2 still did fine overseas.
It did.
Really, you have to go back to technically, I guess the
Iron Man
closest
2.
thing to a failure, Iron Man 2 still did huge money, would be The Incredible Hulk, the Edward Norton film.
Yeah.
I think it's the closest thing to like a domestic struggle that kind of didn't quite get there. But since the MCU has been a thing, the lowest worldwide global budget would be Ant-Man. But that was also one of the lower budgeted films at only 150 million. So it still made like 550 or something globally. It just didn't have the same scale. Yeah.
Well, and you bring up a good point about the budget. I mean, it really should be get some, not necessarily indie level budgets, but everything doesn't need to be a blockbuster.
Well, look, this is sort of the whole point. Like with the first Deadpool film, cost $58 million, right?
Is that a lot?
No.
Yeah, it was very cheap.
Deadpool 2 cost about double that. It cost about 110. But like for $110 million, Deadpool felt like a big budget film without spending 200 to try to make that work. And I thought like there were certain CGI moments in that film that didn't quite work necessarily, but it mostly worked, right? It played fine. Just keep it more small scale. And I think Black Panther is a good example of a film that like redefined a whole area, appealed to a new audience, right? Told a different kind of story.
And still had crappy CGI.
The previous stuff is just never stopping. But at the core of that, what I think the lesson is the first instinct, and I understand why they had this instinct, was to say, what's a piece of Star Wars lore, a character that people love, and let's give the people what they want. Let's make this movie.
Yeah, that's what Bill says, fan service. So, Henry, before we let you go, what are some final thoughts about Solo?
I think there's a silver lining to this, which is that now Disney knows, if they didn't know already, that just putting the word Star Wars, just making a Star Wars movie, any Star Wars movie is not going to be enough. Like, you gotta, catch that Star Wars magic, and you can't, just throw anything out there.
Yeah, right? Put some care into it, for crying out loud. So, Henry, where can we find you online?
At Hanks TV, and I'm on there on Twitter, and follow me, and I'll be writing a little more about not Star Wars, but the upcoming TV season.
Awesome. Well, we will be in touch. Thank you so much for watching us while we yelled at each other. I'm sorry we didn't get you on more.
No problem. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
We'll see you soon.
Later.
All right. So let me tell you about my experience going into this, because I think it's unique. I have a lot of unique experiences here on Pop because I am not as entrenched in this as you guys are. You mean
you haven't read these 25 comic trades that I have back here?
I haven't read them. I also hadn't seen any of the movies of any kind until I was 22.
That would shape your experience, 100%.
And I saw them with a friend of mine who is actually a frequent viewer and listener of our show, Nikki, when we lived in Georgia, who has a full custom-made Stormtrooper outfit. So she was naturally a very big fan, still is. She and her husband bond over Stormtrooper hood. But anyway, we watched the original trilogy together, and it was fine, but it had gotten so embedded in the lore of my existence that there was no way it could have lived up to what I would have expected, which is true also for Indiana Jones. So, which I also saw embarrassingly late. So,
and only the first one.
And only the first one. Yeah, it just didn't. It was like, okay, well, now I've seen it. There was no, like, I love this movie so much because of all the build up to it. So the result has been that I've seen the original trilogy and they're fine. And I can respect the story and I respect all the things that people respect about it. But I don't have that ingrained fandom, right? Like, I care about the characters, but I don't think about them, unless they're actively in front of me.
Right.
Right. I have seen every theatrical release since the prequels. I have not seen the prequels, but I saw 7, Rogue One,
Last
Jedi, and this one.
Yeah.
And they were fine. You know, I saw Rogue One and Keith asked me what I thought, and my first thought was, well, that movie need to get made. Like, it didn't need to happen because I don't care how the plans got to the
Right.
Like, I just didn't. I was totally willing to suspend.
And Rogue One opens up more plot holes for me that just infuriate me.
Well, there are
some. I'm not gonna lie about
there
that.
were, but I enjoyed the character writing. I liked
Some of the characters were good.
That's a perfectly well constructed film.
Yeah.
Right? I think in terms of what it has to do, which is find the drama in a circumstance where we kind of know how it ends and it's kind of buttressing up against something that we already know is about to happen. I think it does a good job of kind of bringing pathos out in that. I like that they went with an ending that was inherently tragic and worked with that. I thought it was well made. But to that point, it's like someone at some point said, what's a story within the story that we know? Like some piece of the puzzle that people have talked about or dealt with that we can turn into a film. And they landed on this idea to sort of make that work. And I like that. I understand where that instinct comes from. And they got away with it on Rogue One because it was the second Star Wars film since they came back. And it was Christmas. And it was suddenly a yearly event type situation. But I think what we've learned this time is that the audience that is necessary to make these a huge hit, the Sarahs of the world in this circumstance, were not given a reason to be like, oh, this looks really interesting, or this looks really different, or this looks really cool, or this looks really distinctive. And if you don't have any of that, Star Wars isn't enough.
Well, you're right. I wouldn't have seen it if Keith and I weren't dating, or I wasn't somehow ingrained in this life. I wouldn't have seen it. I wouldn't have. And I will say, though, I'm glad I saw it. I felt better coming out of that movie than I had coming out of Solo than I had any of the other ones. And that's not because it was the best of them, of the ones that I've seen. It's because I had that experience with it. You know, like I liked the character.
Did you like the Han actor?
I
mean, he's no Harrison Ford, but
yeah, I liked him. I mean, I didn't have any outward complaints about him, but I will say I don't know. I don't tend to care about the actor unless they're like actually obviously terrible. Like then I have issues with them.
We should watch episode 1 sometime.
Well, I don't know.
Oh, Jake
but I mean, Han Solo, as I knew him from the original trilogy, is very like, you know, brash and, you know, disinterested and disconnected, you know, and that's just how he is.
Yeah.
And I liked seeing that younger version of him. I thought that worked. It made me more sympathetic to the character. I'm in a very YA mindset lately.
Right.
So I liked...
There's a YA quality to parts of this.
There is a YA quality. You know, you kind of got to see where he got so gritty and impassive and like kind of a jerk. Like
the huge contrivance his ex-girlfriend shows up just at that exact period of time in the exact place he is. That's very YA.
That's very YA. Yes, it is. But like I said, I've been reading and writing a lot of YA lately, so I don't know. It appealed to me.
I didn't mind it.
I liked it, and I think that the marketing needed to show a different side than it did. They were really leaning too hard into people are going to want to know more about this, about Han Solo specifically because they like him. But you know, and Ron Howard tried to do that a little bit, but it was too late.
The worst things in this movie are the things that are like things like answering questions that people allegedly had about Han Solo, like how he got his name, or
apparently Disney made the movie purely for that scene alone.
Right,
like that's why they agreed to it. They're like, oh yeah, that scene's
there's
great.
This really weird sense that like I get why those things are there, and I didn't hate them, but like when you're watching the movie, it's just like it drags you out of it for a second.
Yeah, that was my groan-worthy moment of this movie.
Yes.
Was him getting his last name.
Which is just dumb. It's just profoundly dumb. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't track.
Because apparently they're Spanish out in the Star Wars universe, but we've never heard anyone speak it until now.
But what's compelling to me about the film in these contexts is that, like, it very much, you know, works its way through. And, like, some of the moments where it connects with the original trilogy are more clever than that. I think the way it works with the Han shot first stuff is compelling to me.
I did like that. I think
that is a nice little moment that I think totally resonates with the character. I understand. And ultimately, I don't blame them for that. It is fan service, but I'm a fan. I like being served at some level. But I guess I felt like I could feel watching the movie why it was underperforming. Like, why it wasn't going to perform the way they wanted it to. Like, I could sense that this just wasn't... Whereas, like, even during Rogue One, I felt like it was tapping into the legacy of the franchise on a much more profound level. This was kind of like a half measure, right? It was there as window dressing, and therefore it kind of got trapped in everything else, and it felt
Yeah.
more like a distraction than an appeal.
Well, it didn't have to do with the original story, but so much.
I mean,
It was
ended up
kind of removed from that.
it ended up connecting with it in some specific ways. Obviously,
Yeah.
the way they bring the rebellion into it, and
Which I liked.
which
She was
I
actually
thought-
Enfys is one of my new favorite characters now.
I thought that I saw some people online sort of complaining where it's like, why was the movie thinking that was a big reveal? And I'm like, the whole point is it's kind of not a big reveal. The whole
Right.
point of the movie in that context is that you are going into this perceiving of them as part of these marauders of these sort of like details, when in reality what you're seeing is the early stages of what will become the rebellion sort of forming in these dynamics.
Because even some of the characters in Rogue One showed up in her little Marauders group.
Right. And so I think it's this good little reminder of some of the ways that and that's why, like, I think that idea is really interesting. And I think, frankly, if you were to go and say, we're going to tell, like, a movie about, you know, the early stages of the rebellion, or make that one of the TV shows they want to make. If they want to make all these TV shows, like, give us...
Which they did. I mean, Rebels had a lot of the start of the rebellion in it.
Right.
And they even mentioned some of the characters from Rebels and Clone Wars, both of the CGI shows, which I recommend, you know, in the series. And they name drop like crazy in this film.
Yeah. And, like, I don't know if you, Jonathan Kasdan, who was Lawrence Kasdan's son, who co-wrote the script.
Yeah.
He's been very active in interviews, talking on social media about where a lot of these things came from, these ideas of how to pull these things together, the names, the villains, the things they sort of pulled from to sort of make this work. And, like, it's very much steeped in that sense of lore, and I think that kind of thing's fan service. But I don't think the film is so built on fan service that other people can't. Like, I swear, like, people, like my mother, right, is going to watch this movie on Netflix one day. And she's not going to go to the theater because neither my brother and I are going to take her to this. It's not the time of year where that's typical, where that's moving through. And she's going to watch it and she's going to be like, that was fun. She's going to remember anything about it? No. She's going to get any of these references? 100% not.
Yeah,
she
I-
might pick up on some
Sarah
small
didn't.
stuff.
I didn't get anything.
Right. And so...
Sarah didn't even know the cameo. Like, I had to explain the whole cameo thing. I was
Right.
like, spoilers for episode 1. This is why the cameo is a big spoiler, but, you know, big shocker.
It's,
you know, that ain't...
to people who didn't watch Clone Wars and Rebels.
Right, exactly. But see, that's the thing, though, and this is my question. I mean, can we say that? I mean, it's been long enough, right?
It's been long enough.
Okay,
And no one
so-
else is going to see the movie. We've established the fact that it's going to make like $14 million this weekend, so we're good.
So the big shocker at the end of the movie, which I liked until the very end of his cameo, was Darth Maul. He showed up, and he showed up. Turns out he was part of the crime syndicate, which has been established in Rebels and Clone Wars. But him, like, igniting his lightsaber at the end, I was like, really, dude? Really? Come on, dude.
They don't trust people to know otherwise, let's be honest.
But here's my question is, like, all right, so Sarah didn't know who it was, but, like, even so the fan between me and Sarah,
right.
somewhere in the middle there, who has
Let's
seen
put me there. Let's put me there.
Okay, you're in the... Well, I can't put you there, though, because you're ingrained in all this stuff, too. But see, it's been, what, 20 years since Phantom Menace?
Yes.
Would people have even gotten who Darth Maul
Okay,
was?
so yeah,
Like,
I'm definitely not in that category.
Yeah,
Because I
that's what I'm
100%
saying.
knew who it was, and I also presume that there was an answer in the canon for why that was happening, as to why he was still alive.
There
is, and I knew, but I didn't know what the answer was, but I figured there was one. But like, yeah, if you were to show that to, I mean, it's really a question of like, what is the cultural legacy of the prequels?
Yeah.
So Sarah reinitiating herself in the franchise, new movies came out, you don't want to watch the prequels, and that is totally fine. You have no reason to.
I'm not being required to.
But like, the question to me is, okay, the prequels are not.
There are some
streaming.
good things in there, though. To be fair,
There are some perfectly good things there. That pod racing scene is still very good.
I mean, Vanessa said she knew who he was. I knew who he was. I just didn't care enough to recognize him. I mean, I heard his name before, and I could pick him out
Did
of
you
a
know
police
lineup?
lineup.
Like if we were to show you a police
of
lineup
like him
of
and like Clifford
him and like extended
and like Vision.
No. Okay,
and
okay, yes. If we
other
include Marvel
vaguely-
heroes and put those people in a lineup, let's see if you can pull out the red guy with the black spikes.
Yes, I would, and like
really,
you know,
that's the Clifford. That's
I'm
Vision?
naming other red guys, you know, and like what's the guy with the guy from Sons of Anarchy plays him with the sawed-off horns on his head?
Hellboy.
Hellboy. I
Ron
know he
Perlman?
wasn't Hellboy.
So our lineup consists of Darth Maul, Hellboy. This is all making a lot of sense.
Yeah,
And then Clifford.
I said Vision. Also, he's purple. we have any other red guys we can put in that lineup?
Deadpool,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, see, and Spider-Man.
right?
Spider-Man's got more blue, but yeah, I'll go with it. I'll
Yeah.
allow
Okay.
it.
It's just their heads. It's just their heads. I could pick them out.
So yeah. Sarah's red villain lineup.
Which clearly Clifford's a villain.
The one from the movie.
Yeah, that narrows it down.
No,
Bob Balaban.
No,
Ooh,
not
we are
no.
peaking.
The
Sorry,
one
guys.
from Captain America.
Red Skull.
Yeah, there's another red guy I know isn't
Yep.
a Star Wars guy.
Yep.
Yes, I have many thoughts on what exactly.
Red
is
Ranger. Thanks, Neil.
happening.
So I mean, okay, yes, I could.
Which Red Ranger?
You know what? The Red Power Ranger. I could not identify them, but I knew it wasn't the Star Wars guy. So I could pick him up out of a lineup, but I
Right.
didn't care who he was.
But it didn't mean anything. To
No,
me,
it didn't mean
right?
anything
like,
to me.
Because like my point was basically like my reaction to that was, oh right, this really compelling villain that got squandered by the fact that they killed him, which
Yeah.
would never happen today. There's not a universe, I strongly believe, that would have outright killed Darth Maul. If they had known, if in the
I don't
context
know,
of
man.
the reason I say this is because like I feel like they would have been like, let's sort of make it so he can like maybe come back in the future or find some way to revive him and bring him
But
back
they did.
in the TV show. I mean, like I
Yeah.
mean, like in the film franchise.
But they
Like-
did the same thing with Coulson, and Coulson was 6 years ago. I mean, I think they
Yeah.
would still kill him off today. I think if Phantom Menace was made today, they would kill him off, but they might save his return for an actual movie, not the TV show.
Yeah, like to me.
But I think they would still kill him off.
I guess I think, and like now I think they've learned this lesson, but I think they're still constantly thinking like, how can we spin this off? How can we make this work?
Yeah.
How can
No,
we
and they
pull from
are.
this? Right.
And honestly, it worked for me. I kind of want to see Kira's storyline now.
100%. I liked the movie this set up.
Yeah.
Like I would go see that movie.
And there was actually talks of, and this is, now I'm getting deep into the Star Wars as if we hadn't already. There was actually supposed to be a live action TV show for Star Wars. And I don't remember if it got canned because Disney's getting its own streaming service and it morphed into something else, or if it was before the Disney buyout. I
So
can't
there was like a
remember.
long time ago. There's constantly
that
been
what it-
talk of like going back to when Lucas had control.
Okay, then maybe it was before the
Yeah.
Disney buyout, and then Disney
There was
buyout kind of like
There was
slashed
a
it.
lot of, and that project has been troubled, frankly, so often in so many different contexts.
There have been a
But
lot of Star Wars projects like that. But yeah.
basically, like there's constantly talk of making a TV show, and it just didn't happen. It just never came together. There is now a TV show. John Favreau is making it, who of course is in this movie.
Yeah.
Briefly, but they are making a TV show for the Disney streaming service
What?
as to how this works.
You're missing a really good conversation on Facebook. Neil asked which Red Ranger, and I told him that I didn't know because there were like 15 versions of the Power
Well,
Rangers.
there's Mighty Morphin, there's Turbo.
Right.
Well, no, excuse me. Mighty Morphin, there is Alien, Turbo, Zeo, Turbo, Space, Lost Galaxy, SPD. This is where my memory starts to go on it. Time Force?
Probably Time Force.
Mystic Force?
Is Dino not a specific one?
There's Dino Charge.
yeah, see, I
like
knew
so-
Dino was
Dino
one
Charge,
of them.
and that's one of the recent ones. And it's
So,
actually pretty decent.
I'm going to say, in a lineup,
Other discussion.
in
Sorry.
a lineup that involves all of the 15 or 10 Red Power Rangers, I would
you
know
you could pick out Darth
that
Maul.
none of them belonged in the Star Wars universe. I would know that. So,
yeah,
Neil,
like I think
challenge accepted. You line up all those Red Power Rangers and Darth Maul, and I'll tell you which one is Darth
like
Maul.
I guess that's sort of the question where it's like, so to this point, like, so Sarah, would you be interested in a Star Wars TV show?
I have not been interested in any of the Star Wars TV shows to date.
So none of
Would
the-
you now
the-
after
but
Solo?
What if it's not animated?
I would be
What if
interested
it's
in a
like-
Han Solo TV show.
So, like, what if it was just sort of, it's a live-action TV show set after the events of Return of the Jedi, so before Force Awakens?
Which one was Force Awakens?
The most recent, like, the first one of the new trilogy.
No, I wouldn't watch it, probably. I mean, no, I don't think I would. I think I would be interested in, I don't know, it's hard to see I didn't see the prequel, so I know that there's a lot of origins as far as, like, the Skywalker family in those.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think of the films that they're currently suggesting, so here's where here's like the Star Wars universe basically sits at this stage, is they're allegedly developing a project for Boba Fett.
Yep.
Who does have an origin in the prequels.
I'm good without Boba Fett. Just
Which-
give me. I'll just watch The Rocketeer and call it a
Okay.
day.
I would argue fundamentally that this movie should be a lesson of we're not doing a Boba Fett movie. Like, I feel like that should be the case. However, the other project they're constantly talking about is letting Ewan McGregor play Obi-Wan Kenobi again.
That I would be good for.
And
that is the main reason, Sarah. That is why I would want you to watch the prequels. Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi is probably one of, if not the saving grace of the prequels.
Okay, here's what I would be interested in.
Yeah.
I want to know, I want to go back before any of this rebellion stuff.
Mhm.
Okay, like before Solo.
Yeah.
And I want to know, in a galaxy long, 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 long ago and far,
Yeah.
far, 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 far away, what led to the situation that happened with the red guy and Han Solo, and why there was these wars and this fuel hoarding and stuff like that. Like, I would want the situation where these planets were settled and they broke apart. And like,
I thought you were going to be curious about why Batman's parents died.
Oh man, I wish I knew.
Why did you say that, Dad?
You were just setting me up. So like, I would be interested in something that existed in the universe that had nothing to do with the original trilogy, except
Right.
for lay the groundwork of why the world is the way it is.
And I think that's where the spin-off movies, if I mean, we're getting a whole new trilogy as it is from the
Rian
guy who
Johnson.
did, Rian Johnson, the guy who did Episode 8, Last Jedi, which I think will be good, because I think we need a trilogy, or even we need movies away from the saga films, as we call them, episodes 1 through 9, because episodes 1 through 9, they focus on the Skywalker family and their impact on this whole universe.
well, they offer an on-ramp too for people who haven't cared up until now, like myself.
Right. Well, that's the thing too, where it's like, I think that's where they miss the mark, which is that this film in particular, and for that matter, Rogue One, were like, you love Star Wars. Here's a story in that universe to help satiate your demand for Star Wars. But our demand's pretty satiated, right?
Yeah,
I
well-
feel pretty
Plenty of it.
satisfied. I feel like I've got plenty of it. But now it's like, what is a new entry point, a new part of Star Wars, a new type of character, whether that character is a woman, whether that character is black, whether that character just has some other perspective that is just not the same story being told over and over again. I think like the saga films, I'm always going to be more invested in on that level, but I want there to be something else tied to that. And so there's the idea of doing that, but like, we don't know David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, who do Game of Thrones. They have a film project that they're working on in the Star Wars universe. It's unclear what that is. There's no indication. They just announced as being working on the project. We don't know if they're writing and directing or what's going on. But ultimately, that's sort of where that lands at the moment. I'm hoping these projects will take the lesson from this, that you can't just take a piece of the existing puzzle and just like, let's make it a movie.
Yeah.
Okay, I have 2 comments. The first one is from our friends online.
Yes.
Bill says that he thinks that Disney is scaling up the Star Wars stuff so they can sell more merch and promote the new Star Wars attractions at Disney parks.
I mean, I'll agree
Which
with that.
I don't
but
think they'd have a
That's
problem
why they
doing.
bought it.
But yeah.
Like, that's why they bought
Oh.
Lucasfilm. That's
I
why
thought-
they...
I thought they bought it so they could have the cameo in Wreck-It Ralph too.
Yes,
Oh, well, that also
100%.
makes
That
sense.
was the long hell. Like, I do think that, look, obviously, the reason why they invested in this is because of the merchandise, and that's why they will keep making movies. And I do think that they would have loved to scale to 2 a year, and I think Solo was an attempt to see if they could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they've learned a lesson about the impact of that. I think they'll have to develop very different types of movies to make that work. But, I mean, look, the Galaxyland stuff for Star Wars,
Galaxy's
the hotel,
Edge, yeah.
all that stuff. It's like, yeah, I'm on board.
Yeah, me too. What's your second comment?
My second comment is, as a relative outsider, Star Wars is, if not one of the most intimidating things to be a casual fan of. It is like impossible.
Well, the fandom's a whole other thing, because the fandom recently has basically forced Kelly Marie Tran off of Instagram. The fandom has gotten horrible.
It's terrible. And it's like, it's funny because being part of the social groups that I am, and like in the worlds that I'm in, there were just as many comments about, little memes and stuff saying, you don't have to know everything to enjoy something like therapeutic, like, hey, it's okay. As well as, Star Wars, like, geek stuff. And it's not to say that these people who aren't, who are mega fans, like, shouldn't be. Like, absolutely, find your thing and run with it, right? But, like, when it gets so finite and exclusive like that, like, I have some, like, you feel stupid. Like, these people go on and they're like, here's why fill in the movie name is an abomination. And I'm like, well, I mean, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I felt like that with Iron Fist, which I didn't hate, because we sat down and I expected to hate it. And we got like 2 episodes in and I'm like, I don't hate this. I mean, it's not the best thing I've ever seen, but I don't hate it.
And see, like, so I didn't bother because I've pretty much fallen off of all that. I think it's never happening. But my mother recently was looking for things to watch. And I'm like, well, have you watched any of the Marvel shows on Netflix? And she's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm just like, well, okay. So there's like 9 seasons of however many seasons there are at this point.
2 Daredevil, 2 Jessica Jones. No, is there 3 Daredevil?
3 Daredevil.
No. If you count Punisher, yes, but no.
Okay, so
that's those 2 in Punisher and 2 Jessica Jones is
Defenders.
5.
Yeah.
Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Defenders, and soon Luke Cage season 2.
Yes.
So soon to be 9.
Yes.
Are you sure there aren't 3 Daredevils?
Yes.
Pretty sure, yeah.
I'm 100% sure.
Because I remember saying at some point season 3 is going to talk about Matt Murdock's mom, and I was very excited for that.
Yeah. And so I was talking to her about this, and I'm really they're almost through Daredevil season 1 now, my parents, and they're like, why can't we just watch Daredevil season 2 now? And I'm like, you can, but do what you want. I did not say that. I told them to watch them all in air order, but that's a different story. But the reason I bring that up is because like they're gonna get to Iron Fist, right? Eventually,
you'll have to report back and let us know what they think.
And I'm very curious, like, what do they think? Because they've read none of the discourse.
Right,
they've read none of those conversations. They could be listening right now, but I don't think so. We'll see what happens. They were listening last time I was here, so you never know.
It's true.
But in those circumstances, what I think you sort of come into, right, is like when you have very little preconception about a show, kind of moving from that, you respond to it very differently. And I feel like that will happen with Solo, right? And that people who don't really
once this kind of discourse dies
100%,
down,
they'll just be like, I had a lot of fun with that. And it will be like people who don't get to the movies because they have young kids, because of money, moving from that, they'll see it and they're just like, oh, I had fun with that.
Yeah.
And
and things are coming out super fast on Netflix and digital stuff. Thor Ragnarok's already on Netflix.
It is. And I mean, that was just November, right? So like we're dealing with an 8-month cycle for things to get to Netflix, a 3-month cycle or less for things to get to DVD and Blu-ray.
Right.
And rental, right?
Yeah, Infinity War is going to be out in August, so 4 months.
Right. So when you have those windows shortening, right, and every level, there are people out there, and I mean, I know we can't understand this, right? That like, in our universe, or Sarah who's been initiated to our gang. I like how it sounds like a gang when you talk about it. It's like this life I'm living.
It is.
Like she's in some sort of cult.
Yes, 100%. And which, to be fair, but like I can't understand waiting to see a movie.
Yeah, I don't either.
Right? Like, this doesn't track to me. And I know that
like, I might wait a week or so, but, like,
Even when I wait after a week, I feel like something's wrong.
I remember very clearly a time in my life when I didn't know what was coming out that weekend.
Right.
Like,
what were you doing with your life?
The first thing, I remember, being in middle school or high school, and a boy would call and ask me to go to a movie with him, and we'd look in the paper... And we would say, oh, well, here are the things that sound interesting to me. What sounds good to you? And then we would read the little blurbs in the news, like the physical paper, and then we would choose. And
you had to look at the little blocks to see what time they were playing. And you didn't have showings on every half an hour for like the first 3 days it was open.
Right. And then nobody had, it didn't like break the bank to go. I mean, it was still expensive, but it wasn't like ridiculous. But like the first movie I remember looking forward to the opening for was Lord of the Rings.
Right.
That was the first thing that I anticipated the release of, like the opening of Lord of the Rings.
I mean, I definitely think back to that as being a very formative movie-going thing for me, because like I was 15, that was like I read the books, it was an age moving through, but like I felt that way. Yes, a little bit, just a little bit. But I mean, like I felt that way for Phantom Menace, right? Like, which would have been a few years before that. But I also I was a big
didn't care.
I was a big Disney kid, so like every new Disney animated feature, right? I'd be like really excited to see it. I'd see the trailer on the previous one and be excited. I would always we went to the Disney store to buy the VHS tapes and get a lithograph with them. Like,
oh, I didn't get the
lithographs.
At a mall. We had to go all the way to Dartmouth. I grew up outside of Halifax. It was like across the bridge in this
Canada for those.
Yes, and I remember this
an international show.
Yes,
and I remember it was Pocahontas. The day that it came out, they canceled the school buses So because the roads were going to be bad, it's
Okay.
really canceled.
Okay, not
This
not
is-
for the movie. Okay.
No, but they canceled school buses because of weather. But then it kind of didn't freeze the way they thought it would, and so I convinced my mother to drive us all the way over there in like slush and like poor weather because I'm like, I need Pocahontas now. And like that was how I approached that. Like I've always consumed media in a way that's about getting that sort of detail and moving from that. But like to me now, it's like I just see movies when they come out. It's a huge, and it's a part of my life because it's what I do on a level that it's not for most people. But like I see like people like Henry mentioned Rotten Tomatoes. It's influencing people more often.
Yeah.
The idea of me being influenced by Rotten Tomatoes like hurts my brain. And I'm just like,
it's laughable. I don't look
you
at Rotten
would
Tomatoes.
let somebody else decide if you're going to see
Yeah.
that movie. You'd let a random group of people whose opinions
That's
are
all.
aggregated.
There have been movies
and worked
reviewed
from.
since there's been movies, though.
Right, and I've
but
always,
not as heavily crowdsourced.
That's
I think
true.
that's the
the
difference.
it's the aggregation factor where it's like, yeah. So I recently,
I mean, you've got movie critics like locally Mal Vincent and the Virginia Pilot, that kind of thing.
a relationship
for
with
ours.
that person, you
Right.
trust their
My
opinion or
dad,
don't.
my dad used to say that our local critic, if he hated a movie, my dad would see it.
Yeah,
because
and
he
that's
knew
the
he'd
same
love
way,
it.
It was the
Yeah.
same way with me and Mal Vincent. But now with the internet, you've got anybody who has internet connection able to put their opinions on the internet, which we obviously know is a horrible idea because that's how you get Bodie McBoatface. You know, we're getting the Bodie McBoatface of movie reviews.
Two things. One, Bodie McBoatface was amazing. Second of all, I think what I would say to that point is that movie reviews have always been around, but the aggregate number where it's like, I had someone recently where it's like, I will go see book club because I will see anything with Movie Pass. And I think just, we need to support movies being made for different audiences in different forms. And I feel like older women don't get enough reasonable roles. And I like all those people.
Well, now Movie Pass has restricted us to only seeing a movie once. with
Right.
Movie
So
Pass.
we have only so many
Yeah,
options.
but are you going to see book club more than once?
No.
But no, it means I can't see
but it
Infinity
means you
War
can't see
twice,
back-to-back.
so I got to go see something else.
Although, if you just buy a ticket to a different movie and then go to the movie,
No,
you wanna see it.
we are
yeah.
law-abiding citizens, Miles. We don't know how you do things up in Canada. But here in America, we
I've
follow
never
the
done
rules.
that. I've never done it. But what I was going to say though is that like I had someone who was like, they're like they just checked Rotten Tomatoes and saw its score,
no.
and it's like I don't want to see that movie. And I'm just like
Yeah.
I've read so many different people's opinions on it, people on Twitter, different conversations, going through all of that. Like for me,
And Vanessa agrees with you, by the way.
right, and
She
I feel
chimes
like in those cases, like we've let Rotten Tomatoes be this bellwether where it's like these reviews are aggregated, and also like if you have some of the Rotten like a 30% score, most of those negative reviews might be like a 5.5. Right, they might be very close to being positive. It's not really giving you the full score of that
Right.
film, and let alone can you trust all these people and do they matter?
Well, and that you're also relying on the fact that okay, do they have the same taste as me?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to have the same taste as you or
Also-
Sarah or any.
Also, those people probably value their time more than I do.
No, you
like-
value your time because you're going to go see these movies that you
Right.
You know.
But my point being is like I will sort of be like, okay, I'm losing a couple hours on this, but that's something that I do, right? I go to the
Yeah.
movies. Whereas other people, like we're sort of talking here, right? Someone's sort of saying it's like, they're not liking crowds or they can't afford to
that's
go
why
to the movies.
that's
at our
why I go
current
on
point.
Thursday.
Right. Like there's a lot of reasons why people don't go see movies, and I totally respect all of those. But when someone just doesn't go because it's like, oh, it had a low Rotten Tomatoes score.
Vanessa said she loved book club.
See?
So I will say I judge previews more than I judge
Yeah, because you
reviews.
didn't like, and that's I keep meaning to bring that up. But we keep getting distracted and going on other topics. But you didn't like the first trailer for Solo or Infinity War. And
No,
then
I didn't.
And then the subsequent trailers you did for
I
each of those
also
movies.
didn't like the first trailer for Ocean's 8. And
Yeah.
now I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yep.
I did not like the first trailer for any of those movies. Ocean's 8, well, for different reasons. I didn't like the Infinity War trailer and I didn't like the Solo trailer because they felt too clicky and nerd culture for me. And I was like, ugh, screw these people. Like, I just was like, I'm never
No,
going
that's
to.
fair.
Like, I mean, I did. I thought, this is not for me. I'm never going to get this. I'm just going to, like, waste Keith's money.
Yeah.
It's basically
before Movie Pass.
right before Movie Pass, and I'm just
Right.
gonna like waste a swipe. Whatever. I'm gonna see it, but this is not for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the Ocean's 8 first trailer because it felt very sexist and like gender swap in a crappy way.
Right.
But the subsequent trailers were better in all three of those instances, and I never felt excited about seeing Solo. but I did get excited about Infinity War, and I am excited to see Ocean's 8.
Right, and I think what you're dealing with there is like those trailers all serve different functions. Like a teaser trailer in that circumstance, right?
Yeah. We have all kinds of trailers now these days, so
too many. There are too many. I'm a crackpot, but yes, there's way too many. But the teaser trailer is really just for the people who already care about it, right? That's there for them to get excited, to get the hype cycle started.
No, I'm talking about the first full trailer.
That's still a teaser trailer, basically. Oh. For those movies, right?
Okay.
Because they're not giving any plot,
right? Like it's very much just like it's like the first Avengers trailer was the one where it's just like the voiceover in the beginning and they show all of them.
Where I told them, and we had this whole big massive debate about whether or not a trailer has to show any development.
Very heated around here.
It did get very heated around here.
And so, but ultimately, the second trailer in cases like that is for your more general audience, right? Where it's people who don't know the movie's coming out, who need more information to move from. It's less about appealing to the click and more about pulling in people and convincing them to spend their time and money on this movie. And I feel like, to be honest, like with Solo, I think the second trailer is better with that. But like, I still didn't think it ultimately achieved that goal, right? I think that it still coasted a lot on people's awareness or lack thereof.
Although I have to say, I think it was the first Solo trailer that I didn't really care for either, because I was like, all right, I'm not really. You basically could have said this was a Rogue One trailer. I've been like, oh, okay, sounds
just
good.
A bunch of iconography.
Yeah, basically, that's all it was. But then someone recut the music with Beastie Boys Sabotage, and I was like,
way better.
I want to see this movie. I don't know why, but I want to see this movie. Something about Sabotage just really gets you.
People really hated that Star Trek scene, though.
Oh yeah, they hated it in Star Trek.
I like that Star Trek scene. I thought it was good.
I thought it was good.
Nice little callback to the start of the first movie. I mean, I thought it was good. I'm not.
I thought it was a fun little callback to the way Shatner pronounces sabotage. I mean, that's what
It is also that. I was thinking of the opening of the Star Trek 09, but that's another movie that lost money, by the way, Star Trek Beyond.
Which actually, a lot of Trek fans like that one more. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
100%.
Bill says that, and this is true with a lot of couples apparently, that there's a lot of movies that his wife likes, and he goes to see him to make her happy, and then he likes them, which has certainly been true in our relationship as well.
Yeah.
And any pairing of people, you'll see a movie that your friend wants to see, unless you're Miles and you see everything.
I'm seeing Upgrade tomorrow morning.
To be fair,
Travis really liked Upgrade.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, Miles can write off all of his movie viewings.
That's true.
Job expenses.
Right. I mean, at a certain point, the individual deductions become pointless. But yes.
And then Robert points out that the whole world, including Rotten Tomatoes, loves Shawshank, and it bored the hell out of him, which I don't understand. I love it, but
and so
it's cool. It's subjective.
And that's the thing where it's like, so like when it comes to like Solo, like I think Henry's right. Like the reviews were just kind of mediocre. They weren't bad reviews. They weren't like intensely negative, but like there wasn't a whole lot of love for it. It was just like, this is solid, right? You might get something out of it. You might love it, but there wasn't that like can't miss. This is a new paradigm. This is a whole new era. You've got to get.
Did anyone expect that though?
That's the question, and that's why like I feel like if that was what was necessary, this film was never designed to do that. No amount of director changes, no amount of
this wasn't going to start a new trilogy.
Although it kind of feels like it was trying to a little bit, and that's why
it set it up for other stuff.
It set it up for other stuff, but never with the sort of weight maybe that would have been necessary to create that kind of interest. And so like they could have pushed it another 6 months. They could have pushed it to holiday. Right now, Disney's big movie over Christmas is Wreck-It Ralph in November, and then
excited for that one. Actually.
and then Mary Poppins in December.
When's Christopher Robin coming out?
August.
And when don't we have The Incredibles coming out? Is that
Incredibles comes out next week?
Like what next week? Yeah.
Incredibles?
Yes. The
Why
Incredibles
aren't you more
2
excited?
comes out on Friday, June 15th.
I had no idea it was this close.
Friday, June 15th.
I genuinely didn't. I thought it was later on.
Seen all the marketing
I have, but I don't think I've seen the date.
toys?
I have seen all the toys, but I haven't seen all the. Again, I see this stuff from when like the director gets announced. So like for me, I figured we still were another few months out from this thing.
No, Bill says the premiere's tonight.
Would be in LA.
Yeah, he's out in LA.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where we're at right now. And so like Disney, and that's the sort of other big thing too, is like the sort of Disney, if the Fox deal goes through, right?
Yeah.
Like if you go forward and look at their schedule in the future, like every 2 weeks there's a Disney owned film that will be opening. And so the cannibalization that comes with that, like there are too many tentpoles, right?
Yeah.
Like currently on the schedule there's like umpteen dozen X-Men spin-off films that Fox has put into development to try to make that happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't think those will all stay if the deal goes through, to be honest with you. If Gambit ever happens, who knows? But I think the point stands that, like, there's a point where you just can't keep making these. Right? Like, is there just a point?
I mean, people claim Star Wars and superhero fatigue, but I'm not seeing any sign of slowing down.
See, and that's where it's like, so this notion of fatigue, where it's like, so Sarah, you are a casual person, right?
I am a casual person.
Do you feel fatigued at Star Wars?
Well, that's kind of hard to say because I haven't seen all of them.
Right.
And I'm pretty apathetic toward them.
So for you, it's like, but you don't feel like you're being so inundated with Star Wars.
No, but I felt like that about Marvel.
Okay. So you got to that point with Marvel.
I've gotten to that point with Marvel where some of the not as strong films have felt very rote. And it was like, oh, all right, that was another Marvel movie. You know, and I was annoyed that I had to wait to see why it was important. Like when I left Doctor Strange, I was like, all right, well, that happened. And after Infinity War, this is a relevant and interesting character. Yeah. And I should have felt like that after leaving Doctor Strange, the movie, and not...
We walked out of there saying, that was a movie.
Yeah, I did. We both walked out of there. And you asked me what I thought of it, and my answer was, that was a Marvel movie. Yeah. And I am, you know, like, the fact that it's all so serialized... But, like, you know, it's like TV without the payoff, I guess.
It is. Well, I mean, to me, I would look back and think, like, the Marvel film that, to my mind, best exemplifies sort of a similar solo moment is Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 was not a financial failure. It still made a boatload of money.
Right.
And so it did not have that side of the narrative. But, like, Iron Man 2 feels like it accomplishes very little. Okay. It doesn't really take a story in a new direction. It has too many villains. It has that classic problem.
It gave us War Machine.
It did give us War Machine in these kind of forms and details. But, like, and, I mean, it also gave us...
Sam Rockwell as Justin Hammer?
Right, but also Scarlett Johansson.
Oh, hooray.
See, okay. You didn't want to talk. But my point is...
I could take her lever.
Iron Man 2 was part of that binge, though.
Yeah, for you, yes.
Right. So my point, though, is that, like, that film, if you look back on it, it didn't really do a whole lot of building for the future in terms of story, right? It was kind of just, we're going to tell a serious character. Thor 2 functions in a very similar fashion.
Yes.
They did not know how to tell sequels that kind of played with that. And what you realize is that, like, Marvel has figured out how to make tens of billions of dollars making these movies. But they have little missteps there. Films that didn't quite work.
They do. And now, just now, 10 years later, they're finally starting to break away and give us Thor Ragnarok, give us an Ant-Man movie. You know, things that are kind of breaking... Guardians, breaking the mold.
Which is why I'm very curious of Ant-Man and the Wasp. Right?
I'm looking forward to that one.
I'm looking forward to it, but, like, do they have a handle on how these films work differently? But also, how much is Lucasfilm going to look at what Marvel did and think, what lessons can we learn from that? What did we not do with Solo that maybe they did more successfully? And how does that change what are surely, like, at least 6 dozen Star Wars movies that are in some form of development in some capacity?
So many Star Wars movies.
There's so many.
I will say... I wonder sometimes about the Marvel movies if I would like them more if they didn't have that weird continuity. Because some of them I get why there's two...
Let's just watch DC. They have weird continuity.
Okay, but it's not about the fact that it's weird. It's about the fact that it exists.
Right. That you feel pressure.
Right. Like I, for example, saw Guardians... without having, I mean, I saw some of the other Marvel movies, but I didn't know them in any sort of context. I hadn't watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. In fact, I watched like one episode and sort of fell out of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But like...
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. did a lot better, guys. Like Bill mentioned earlier. It deserves some credit. But you definitely don't need to see it.
No.
But anyway, I didn't even really know there was an MCU. Like, I didn't until you and I got together, and then I had no choice. That is my life now. But I saw Guardians of the Galaxy, and I liked it for what it was.
Right.
And that was a good feeling because I saw a movie that I liked, and I didn't feel any pressure to see anything else, and I didn't worry I had to catch up.
Yeah.
Which is why Guardians did as well as it did. Right. Was because people heard about it and didn't feel like, have I watched the previous 7 movies? I can't watch this.
Right.
They felt like it's a fun comedy, it's a new set of characters, it's an enjoyable story, it's a throwback thing.
Right. Well, ask me why I've never seen Lost. Because by the time the buzz got to me in my little hole or wherever I was, probably working overnights at the time, I had no idea what was going on. And there was no on-ramp for me. So
Besides
Lost,
season 1 of Lost?
well, yeah, but this was like when Hulu was still beta testing.
Right.
So there wasn't the way to catch up on it unless I was going to like
Buy DVDs.
get DVDs. And like, I still don't have time for that. Besides, I was watching everything when I was working overnight. So I was either working
It's
or
a big
sleeping.
commitment.
Yeah. So there was stuff
I mean,
online.
I still haven't seen all of Lost.
The late seasons are shorter. You're fine.
Okay, well, I'm still not going to watch it because I didn't, like, now it's a commitment,
Yeah.
you know? Now, some of those things turned out.
You're about to get married. You know about commitment.
Right. Well, yeah, right. Well, some of those things were worth the payoff, right?
Yeah.
Like, I waited on Harry Potter. Didn't ever read the books, didn't ever see the movies. Finally said, you know what? I'm going to do it. And it was worth it.
I bought her the books to
And
read.
then I downloaded them all on audiobook and listened to them. And now Bill is saying
no respect.
the same thing happened to him with Game of Thrones.
Right.
But he binged it to
So much Game of Thrones. Nope. I saw the first episode after like I think they were like season. Let's see. When did Game of Thrones come out? 2010?
2011.
2011. Okay. So I watched one episode in 2014, and I was like, "There's a lot." Just the first episode, and I was like, "There's a lot of crap going on here." They're already 3 seasons in. There's no way I'm going to catch up with this stuff. Just I'm out.
Yeah.
The Walking Dead was another one that I watched
I got so
initially
bored with
and
it.
then got out of it, and
Right.
then sort of that was it, and everyone was talking about it, and I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, you're not missing much. Read the comics.
Well, I mean, so
I'm
like,
not going to do that either.
and like the idea that there are people who haven't seen some of the Marvel movies, it's like to Keith and I, that doesn't make any sense. Right?
No, I get it.
But I totally understand.
Yeah, I
right?
get it.
I'm not going to go back. Like, my mother has seen most of them because we've been home or she's just bored and just kind of
Yeah.
flicking around with Netflix and seeing what's available.
Well, yeah, because now they're all on Netflix at
Right.
this point.
As long as that's the case. But, like, it's one of those circumstances where I think before Infinity War, my brother hadn't seen Ragnarok or Guardians 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so he and his girlfriend caught up, right, before they went to see it.
I had a buddy of mine, Joe, in the band. He saw an Infinity War, but he still hadn't seen Black Panther yet. And he just now watched Black Panther.
And
See, that's one I would have seen.
right.
There's
But you
a,
didn't need it for Infinity War.
no,
No,
you
100% not.
well, I wouldn't
It
have seen it.
helps.
I don't
It
think
does.
I would
It
have seen
definitely
Infinity
helps.
War if I was still living in Atlanta and had that life where I randomly saw Iron Man 3 for some reason and saw Guardians.
Second best Iron Man.
Okay.
Yes.
But, like, I hadn't seen the first Iron Man. I don't know why, but I wound up in the theater to
Wait,
see
is that
Iron
a
Man 3.
controversial opinion?
Yeah, I think some people.
2 is bad.
Yeah, I think 2's worse.
3
than
is a good
3.
movie. The Mandarin Twist is great.
I don't know if it's great,
It's
but
great.
that's a whole other topic for another time.
Shane Black is great.
Shane Black is great. Mandarin Twist, I get why they did it. I can understand it, but that's a whole other topic for a whole other day. But yes, continue.
So there are movies that I would have seen probably because of, like, I don't know, I probably would have seen Ant-Man. I'm a big Paul Rudd fan.
See, my colleague was saying that like she wanted to see Black Panther because it's Black Panther.
Yeah.
And because like there's all this buzz and people are really
Yeah.
talking about it. But I'm like, have you seen any of the Marvel movies? She's like, no. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, oh, I saw Ant-Man. And I'm like, and she's like, I love Paul Rudd.
See, that would have been me. I probably would have seen Ant-Man. I probably would have seen Black Panther because of the cultural significance of it. And I would have been one of those people that's like, when's Superman going to show up? Like, I generally did not have.
We have fixed that for the
No,
most part.
he
guys.
has. I mean,
A little bit.
there was
It's
no.
part of the initiation to the game.
Mhm.
I mean, I get it. I get it now, but
Yeah.
it was not my interest, my personal inherent interest that drove that.
A random person on the street does not need to know these things.
And see, then you've got me over here being like, I liked Ant-Man. I really want to see that Edgar Wright cut of Ant-Man, though. And no one's.
Edgar Wright cut doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist, but I still would have liked to have seen an Edgar Wright Ant-Man.
I mean, like, to be fair, like, to go back to Solo for a second, it's like, I'd love to see what Lord Miller wanted to accomplish dialogue-wise with this, if only because I'm curious. I'm not convinced it would have made the movie any fundamentally different or more successful or anything like that.
I mean, they're comedy guys. People are used to them being comedy, but, like,
Right.
if you look at some of, like, the concept art and everything, it looks dark. Like, it's
Oh, I mean, like,
much darker.
but, like, they were saying that,
gritty
like,
film.
a lot of the things, so they were talking about how the Marauders have a name that's from the original comics that came out around the time of New Hope.
Yeah,
right?
the Cloud Riders. or
Right, the
something
Cloud
like that.
Riders. And,
Yeah.
like, they were talking about how that was something that Lord and Miller very much pushed for at the script level. They wanted to include
Tag
as
and
many-
Bank.
Right. As many references back to these sort of details to make that work.
A lot of the expanded universe, for those who aren't familiar with, that has now been decanonized.
They're taking what pieces of it they think make sense. And certainly like that kind of project, Lord Miller obviously poured a lot into this. I think it was just a matter of their ability to keep the ball rolling on this sort of huge production.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you just need to find that perfect combination of kind of directors with very specific points of view who can simultaneously keep a film set running and be very kind of, I guess, economic in the way they
and
work.
that's kind of the question I was thinking of. I'm trying to figure out how to formulate it here. You mentioned the budget earlier and how it doesn't need to be big blockbusters anymore. If Lord and Miller were given a smaller budget, do you think they would have done better with the movie?
Given that the whole issue was their ability to communicate what they wanted and taking up too many takes, I would argue that I think there still would have been a fundamental disconnect in philosophy.
Fair enough.
I think basically what happened was there was always a disagreement. I think both sides thought the other side would give in, and then no one gave in.
Fair enough.
Like I've heard some of the anecdotes about how Emilia Clarke has complained about their vague suggestions to her for her performance. And like one was like they told her that they wanted her to be more film noir, and she was saying that wasn't an acting note. And
it makes sense.
When
to me,
I saw
but
the
I'm not an
movie, it made
actor.
perfect sense to
Yeah.
me. And so I think a lot of people were like, Emilia Clarke, that might be on you a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think the reality is that Kathleen Kennedy has a very specific vision of what they want on these films, and what's been very clear by all the director changes, all those circumstances, is that it's tough for people to work in that environment. But then you have Rian Johnson, who is a very specific type of director with a very clear point of view, but whose work ethic and very specific way he makes movies seems very much congruent with that. That's who they've got to find. That's the kind of dynamic that they need to work with. But find people who can make a movie for $50 million and tell it in a smaller scale and ground it. Because it's like, look, if you want to tell an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie on Tatooine, you don't need space battles.
Nope.
Right? You don't need these sort of huge effects details. You just need the desert.
You tie in the crime element. You have the huts. You've got some sand elements. You throw some lightsaber effects in there.
Right.
You call it a day.
Yeah, and you have some just good old-fashioned emotion. Which Star Wars is full of.
No, they totally are, and they totally
They're melodramas. They are 100% melodramas.
They flesh out Obi-Wan's character and Anakin. Like Anakin is so much a better character in the Clone Wars cartoons than he ever is in the prequels. Like you're like, why are you so cool between episodes 2 and 3, and now you're a douche again in episode 3? I hate you. Like, I mean, episode 3 is still the best of the prequels in my opinion, but. That's again another discussion for another time. It's the most enjoyable, maybe not the best.
For me, I would argue the first one is more enjoyable only because I go back to when I saw it for the first time and was so thrilled to be back in this universe.
Fair enough.
It's not the best. Third is the most well executed. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. That's the funny thing is, I have said the prequels have had a lot of good ideas, just everything was executed horribly.
And midi-chlorians was a bad idea.
Oh, also valid. Yes, anyone will agree with that.
Sarah, don't you love this conversation?
I have no idea what you're talking about. I have zoned out.
For the record, I still am not convinced I know what I'm talking about with midi-chlorians. For the record, I'm all in on Ewoks. Neil just brought up Ewoks, 100% in. I loved the Ewoks as a kid. I have not stopped loving the Ewoks. When I found out that people on the internet were mad at Ewoks,
are those the little like hooded teddy bears?
They are, and I don't understand why anybody would be negative towards them. And I am still very confused. And I was really mad when they changed the closing song when they released them remastered.
I didn't mind that. I was mad about the Hayden Christensen ghost.
They feel like the necessary animal sidekick. You know, they feel like the chicken in Moana.
They're a reminder that
Chicken Moana was great.
Oh yeah, great.
I mean, the pig's better and should have been on the boat. But anyway,
chicken's way better.
Alan
Tudyk, come on.
Listen, they had to put the chicken in as many scenes as possible for what they paid for Alan Tudyk doing on that.
I think my point that I would make, though, in that case is like it's definitely a reminder. Like George Lucas saw the Star Wars movies as being for kids. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
and he actually had a lot of the stuff planned out, I found out recently. Like he had spin-off movies already in his head. So they were Kathleen Kennedy and all of them are pulling from that.
Right. I just think I think there's so much sort of going on with the sort of those dynamics and those sequels. There's just a lot there, and I feel like I want them to explore it. I want them to fail exploring it. I'm more than content to have had them quote unquote fail to make this movie. A, because I think the movie's good and I enjoyed it, but also because I want to see what they play around with. Like, I don't
force
view
them
it
to
as
reinvent.
I don't view it as a sacred text that is ruined by its sort of like dilution
or set on fire by lightning to a tree.
No, none of these things. I ultimately feel like I am not so like precious about Star Wars. And really, it's just my nature in general, but specifically to Star Wars, is not that important to me.
Right.
I kind of want to see what they come up with. I hope they come up with things that are a little bit more inspired. But at the end of the day, I'm open to whatever they bring to us.
Vanessa's brought this up twice, and we've got to talk about it.
I saw that.
She was shocked to learn that Chewie ate people.
Right.
I mean, Bill answers it for us. Why do you think they called him Chewie?
Well, that's actually very confusing as to why he does that. Han's just like, I'm going to call you Chewie. I
did appreciate how they threw the Lando Han in there.
Yes, that I liked. That made me laugh.
Because if you go back to the Empire Strikes Back, Sarah,
he does not.
He doesn't pronounce it correctly. Billy D. Williams doesn't I don't know if he refused to, or if he just doesn't understand it, or what. But they continued that with this movie, and I appreciated that.
To the point about Chewie, I mean, like, I guess my argument would be that he was being held hostage. He was being deprived food of any type.
Yeah.
He was surviving.
He was probably borderline feral at this point.
Yes, 100%. Right, and and the reality is that if Han could not speak a bit of Wookiee.
Yeah.
Right? They probably would have just eaten him too, because he wouldn't have a way of communicating, a way of moving from that. Obviously, they do a lot to build up Chewie's humanity over the course of the film. I know humanity. I guess Wookieing. I don't know how to translate that into that form. You know what I meant.
Wookmanity.
Wookmanity. That sounds like
so he's woke.
Now. Neil, he's a rescue Wookiee. I think the reality, what I would say, is that they do a lot to sort of play that up. I remember I was at Disneyland on Star Tours, and one of the planets you can visit is a Wookiee planet. Mm-hmm. It's like you go to the Wookiee planet and you see like this kind of detail. It's like they are a species. They're a group of people who have their own process, and I think bringing in more of them here, I think was a good choice to sort of remind us of that process. And it is, again, one more thing where it's like, well, what's Chewie's, Wookiee love interest going to be like in this next movie and all that stuff?
Well, two things. Apparently, the Lord Miller version had Wookiees and Stormtrooper outfits. Like, they had them wearing, like, Stormtrooper armor.
Wook troopers.
Yes. Or Stormkeys?
Nope.
No.
Wook troopers.
Yeah, you're better. But secondly, I don't know why people would be surprised that he eats humans. Humans are meat. We're flesh and blood, just like any other, like,
people
cows.
Were upset he was going to eat porgs. Like, people were going to be upset if he eats humans. That's what I'm saying.
He was going to eat porgs, so, I mean, he's obviously, he's a cannibal of some sort here. He eats meat. That's another word, not cannibal. What's the word I'm looking for?
Carnivore.
Yeah, there you go. It's late. It's almost 10 o'clock, guys. This is, what I meant.
Oh, wow, it is almost 10. We've been going on for a while.
It did take me a second, too, to figure out carnivore, but I knew what you meant.
That's Sarah words. I don't word. So,
yeah, but even Neil's pointing out my little... language that I made up.
Game.
Well, hooded teddy bears or Ewoks.
Fallout 4, Radiation Minecraft.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yep.
She's seen most of the building parts, I guess.
Yeah, basically. So, okay, I'm going to end it on this because probably one of the best parts of Ron Howard taking it over, we got a Star Wars Arrested Development mashup that is official. And I'm okay with that.
I like how it's Ron Howard doing this movie, but it's Infinity War that randomly has Tobias in it.
That was great.
Like, that was the weirdest moment in the credits of that movie. After I sat through them all. No,
because Russo brothers.
I know that's why, but it still was very confusing to me.
No, after seeing the stair car at the airport, I mean,
I think what I would sort of go through that and say, sort of to this point, is like, I don't want them to throw out all this work entirely. Like, I think this will go down as one of those movies that, like, have you guys seen any movies that were, like, failed franchise starters?
Starters?
Like, did you guys see The Golden Compass?
No.
Yes, but that was...
obviously a long time ago.
I saw it, and I was like, all right. Yeah,
right. Give me more examples.
So, Prince of Persia.
That Jake Gyllenhaal
John
movie?
Carter.
What about the Vin Diesel one? Was it not Triple X? What was the other one? Riddick, Chronicles of Riddick.
Chronicle of Riddick became an ongoing franchise.
I know, but it started off rough, right?
Yeah, it started off, and they kind of had to reboot it as a lower budget.
Was it that dumb movie I hated about the planets all on a line and it was dark and they had to burn the alcohol?
Was that The Witch Hunter?
No, Pitch Black.
Oh, that was related to that. Yes.
stupid.
But like I'm always so like, and so Bill brings up like you know sort of like the Last Airbender, like the attempt to do that as a live action franchise when they tried to do Avatar with M. Night. All of these
Shamalama Ding Dong.
correct. Every one of these cases, it's like I look back on Solo and it's like it will be a box office failure. Right, that is very much determined. Mm-hmm. The movie made no money in China. You can't do that in this day and age as a big blockbuster and make this work. But like, what's weird about this is like I don't think it will be remembered as a failure as a film.
No,
I don't think people will look back on this later.
Same
on.
with Last Jedi, though. I mean, it was a box office.
That movie also made $1.3 billion.
Yeah, it made a lot of money, but critically, you know, people did not.
Critically, was a success.
Okay, yeah, with the critics, yes. But like as far as like the what's the word I'm looking
user
for?
scores, that kind of stuff. Yeah,
like
that nonsense.
It was it was very much a divisive movie, but I think in the long run, I think people can be like, oh no, Last Jedi is one of the better ones,
right?
Because it is.
Yes, and I think that's where it's this question though of we're in an environment where we do judge things very quickly, where we kind of determine their fate. Like I think this, as sort of Henry was saying earlier, like you just kind of get in your head that like, oh, it didn't perform in its opening weekend.
Yeah.
And the discourse comes out where it's like, Solo underperforms, Solo does this.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't really care about that. I'm fascinated by how they respond to it. But like, it's a movie. And you enjoyed the movie, right, Sarah?
I did enjoy it.
And I thought it was good.
Mm-hmm. I liked it quite a bit.
Sarah, what kind of parting words do you have for us?
It's not Star Wars related. Can I still say it?
Yeah, because we've stuck solely to Star Wars this evening.
I was really sad to hear that Kate Spade died today. And
you want to end on that note?
No, I'm going to because it's really important, and she was a very prominent figure in my life and kind of the first designer that I ever really liked, and to find that her death was by suicide was particularly tragic.
So I will just say, like, obviously, as all the social media posts echo, it's like, if you are dealing with situations like this, various hotlines, people to talk to and working through this. But, like, I was really profoundly impacted by how many women on my social media feeds said very much the same thing of what that first Kate Spade bag meant to them.
Oh, it was
huge. What it represented. And, like, I knew who Kate Spade was, but like I'd never obviously had any kind of connection to it. And so to see so many people echoing the same sentiment was just a very clear reminder of the impact some of these things have that was sort of left unspoken or sort of gone through.
This is where I'm going to be a white dude and be just like, I kind of threw Kate Spade over in that corner with like Lisa Frank and Barbie.
You're
and
not
girl
even
stuff.
You just sit over there and be quiet for a minute.
But no, I was really kind of profoundly impacted by how many people were sharing this similar sentiment, but also then like
Kate,
the disconnect of
Kate
then
Spade
what she was obviously going through, and to be able to sort of reconcile those things.
Right, Kate Spade was goals for me and many other women around the country and the world. And if you are suffering, you are not alone. Please call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800-273-8255 if you need help. It gets better, I promise. So, thank you so much for listening to Popped. I hate to leave on a sad note, but...
So you don't want to pick out Darth Maul off this like picture of Red Rangers that I've got up here?
No, I don't.
I've got all of them from Mighty Morphin to Dino Charge.
None of them are Darth Maul.
Well done.
Yes,
you win.
I win. What do I win? Another Star Wars movie in my future?
Yes. Next Christmas.
Awesome. Yeah, well...
Or we can watch Power Rangers.
I know what I'm doing. Yeah, I'll be there. So, and you will be with us on various Tuesdays here and there.
Sporadic Tuesdays.
We talked about taking a break over the summer, but you never really know if it's actually going to happen.
Well, the issue with taking a break over the summer is A, it's when you want a break, but it's B, when a lot of pop culture is happening.
I know.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like to come on for an hour and talk about The Incredibles 2.
I know, and you're on break, so we actually have you to talk about.
That is true. I will be here on more occasions than I would otherwise. So it's ultimately up to the feeling. Certainly, if you want to post on the Pop page, send Popped a message. If you want to talk about something specific, if there's a show you'd really like to go through, let them know and peer pressure them into doing it.
Yeah, well, obviously we can be swayed. You can tweet at us at Pop Show or comment on our Facebook page. We keep it populated with, not every hour, but pretty much. With breaking pop culture news, facebook.com/Pop Show, where you might be watching us live on most Tuesdays starting 8 p.m. Eastern. Or you can download our podcast 24/7, 365. All of our not all of our back episodes, but many on
almost for a full year now.
Sweet. On iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and Podbean. And you can find me on Twitter at Sarah Janet Hill. Miles, where can we find you?
I'm on Twitter at Memels, MEMLES.
And I'm at VA Pianist.
Or just tweet the show. We're all here.
Yeah.
All right.
Post on the Facebook page, tweet the show. We're here. We're not going to, we'll respond. And we will see you all on some Tuesday in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us what you want to hear. Bye,
Later,
guys.
guys.
Bye, everybody.